Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting for April 20th, 2026. I will first await a motion to leave the non-public and to seal the minutes of that non-public session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Jefferson, our recording secretary, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor McKechnie.
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly is absent. Councilor Cook.
Here.
Councilor Tabler.
Here.
Councilor Blaylock.
Present.
Councilor Bagley. Here. Councilor Moreau.
Here.
Councilor Flynn.
Here.
And Councilor Hawkins.
Here.
Before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I just want to note and send condolences to the Splain family on the loss of their matriarch, Beverly Splain, who's joining Arthur after 94 years. Knew her as a child, and to know either, David, Robin, or Peter, is to know how loving a mother she was. Met her husband in Portsmouth High School. He actually spoke at Councilor Blaylock's high school graduation, and just an amazing family, and spent her whole life here making it better. So to the Splain family, we hold you in our hearts, and we are thinking of you at the loss of Beverly. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Was debating, we have acceptance of minutes of the minutes and actions of the March 16th, 2026 City Council meeting.
Your Honor, I move to accept and approve the minutes of the March 16th, 2026 City Council meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a few proclamations that I will, hopefully they're all in this one folder. Just one, okay. Christine Freeze, we do have Christine, Library Director here. All right, this is for National Library Week here in Portsmouth. Whereas National Library Week is celebrated April 19th through 25th this year with the theme Find Your Joy, because as we know, libraries spark imagination, lifelong learning, and community connections. And whereas Library Week was created in 1958 by the American Library Association to support local libraries and library workers, and we are drawn to the Portsmouth Public Library because it is one of the treasures of our city, open and free to all who wish to take advantage of the resource and guidance the library and its staff have to offer. And whereas Tuesday, April 21st is recognized as National Library Workers' Day, and is therefore an occasion to celebrate the tremendous team who act as a community compasses to help library patrons find the joy by leading us to endless opportunities for engagement, enrichment, and development. And whereas Portsmouth Public Library provides a variety of events, courses, discussions, and opportunities for young and old, offering a place to find new ideas, lifelong learnings, new friends, and yes, joy. And whereas the Portsmouth Public Library, through all of these efforts, strengthens our community and transforms the lives of our residents for the better. Now, therefore, I, Dago McCachran, Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, on behalf of the members of the City Council and citizens of Portsmouth, do hereby proclaim April 19th through the 25th, 2026 as National Library Week in Portsmouth, and call upon the residents of Portsmouth to get to know our library even better than they may already, and to recognize our library professionals as being dedicated to elevating our minds and lives, because they and their resources help us find the joy. Given with my hand and the seal of the City of Portsmouth on this 20th day of April 2026. So I'd ask Christine to come up and receive this. All right. This next one is the Portsmouth Police Department Award New Hampshire Law Enforcement Accreditation. So this is a pretty big deal, and I'd ask, we have both Police Chief Mark Newport and Accreditation Manager Kate Cook here and in support of this item. I would ask that, which one do you think is going to be better at talking to this? Yeah, Kate? Okay, good. If you would both come up and just say a few words, truly impressive award, and if you could list how many communities have it in the state, and how we're top dog, that'd be great too.
Good evening. I'd just like to thank you for your support to allow us to do this, because it takes support from the council to fund us to be able to meet these standards of accreditation. We were already previously CALEA accredited at Advanced Accreditation, which is a national recognition to show that we're following the best practices and standards and law enforcement with our policies and our practices. And then the state in the last year started a state accreditation program. So we felt that not only should we be recognized nationally, but we should also be recognized through the state. So we are the first police department in the state of New Hampshire to receive both accreditations, which is a big thank you to Kate, who's only been with us for 18 months. And in that time frame, we've got reaccredited through CALEA and now the state. So she's been a great addition to the police department.
Well, thank you again, Kate and Chief Newport, for the work that went into this. Impressive and incredibly grateful to be the first. We have the report back from the Public Art Review Committee regarding plans for the J. Smith Park. Do we have Chris? Oh, Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. You will see in your packet the report back in reference to Parks recommendations on the J. Smith Park. These are basically improvements to be made, and I would move for the council to accept the report from the Public Art Review Committee and send it to the trustees of trust funds so they can disperse the funds from the J. Smith Park Trust.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, so we have public comment, debated whether or not we're going to bring the Prescott Park Resiliency Study before public comment, but to give everybody a sense of that. But there's a lot of people signed up for public comment, so we'll hear that. So hopefully we ask better questions during the presentation. I'll have you know it's always tough to know if we should bring it up before or after, but we're making the decision to bring it up after public comment, but immediately after. So if you stick around, bless you, we'll have that conversation. But we'll start with, Karina Quintas, not on Prescott Park, but an upcoming event.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Karina Quintans, and I live on McDonough Street. I'm here to speak about an important event in our community this Thursday, April 23rd, the West Bank Town Hall at South Church. This town hall presents a unique opportunity for Portsmouth residents to hear firsthand accounts from 3 of our own community leaders who recently went to Palestine. David Grishaw Jones, Kirsten Hunter, and I will share what we witnessed, because our stories about what's happening over there and America's role in this decades-old crisis deserve to be heard by our community. All politics is local. Let me explain. A Portsmouth resident from Iraq has been standing in Market Square every day by herself for a year, protesting our foreign policy in Gaza. I hope some of you have stopped to talk with her. I'm happy to share that the Portsmouth Police have been incredibly gracious, caring, and supportive of her. They regularly greet her on the street. Yasmin is her name, and she's experienced mostly positive support from those who stop to talk with her or drive by and honk their horns. Collectively, we are sickened by the illegal U.S. wars in West Asia and how our tax dollars are being used while our needs go unmet at home. In March 2024, the Portsmouth City Council voted down a ceasefire resolution put forward by Councillor Cook and then Councillor Denton before it was even read or discussed. This resulted in alienating Muslim members of this community. This town hall on this coming Thursday is an opportunity for the council to take a meaningful step to acknowledge this crisis of endless U.S. war, violence, and oppression that started in Israel and Gaza and has spread across West Asia, and which is now undeniably affecting every person in Portsmouth and across the country. In Portsmouth, when our neighbors face oppression, we don't look away. We educate ourselves, we speak out, and we take action. I urge the City Council to consider how Portsmouth can stand with those seeking safety, justice, and peace for all people. I'm going to say that again. Safety, justice, and peace for all people. I ask you to join us on Thursday. I note that Ann Romney, another community leader, has also been to Palestine. She's been organizing events at 3S to educate the community about this issue. To date, I've seen one city councilor in attendance. I'd just like to state that together, through education and engagement, we can make a difference in a world that is now going up in flames. Thank you, and I hope to see some of you on Thursday.
Thank you, Karina. Next, we have Beth Marginson on the topic of Prescott Park.
Thank you, Your Honor. Beth Margison, 24 Marcy Street. Again, I am the chair of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I am not speaking tonight in my capacity as chair, but as a private citizen. So I want to thank Councillor Cook, who took the time this afternoon to take a call from me and speak to me and update me on things, and I really appreciate that. So I just want to be clear. There's been like a lot of comments like we don't have funding to do the park. We were well aware of that. When I was on the Prescott Park Master Plan Implementation Committee, it was decided in '24 not to reassemble the Blue Ribbon Committee, and that at that point only Phase 1A was going to be done. In terms of the McIntyre funding it, that was dependent on certain criteria being met under the McIntyre program and certain excess revenue or profits. So, you know, I'm well aware that unfortunately, the renovation of the park is going to stop at 1A. I think that's unfortunate, but I also realize that is the reality, and that was something that has been known for me by about two years. So in terms of the Prescott Park Master Plan implementation, I share people's concerns that these things are moving at a glacial pace. They can't anymore. The park is inundated with water. It is really significantly affecting the park and the surrounding Marcy Street area at that point. However, where the City Council takes steps that are deviate from that master plan, that needs to be brought to a public hearing. And people need to be involved in that, and people need to voice their concerns or their opinions in favor of it. So that is a concern for me. I am concerned about speaking before the presentation. I appreciate the mayor's thoughts on this, because we don't know what the presentation is going to be. We don't know what is going to be said. We have no information other than what's in the packet. And, you know, like certainly, you know, the dismantling and reconstruction of Lean 2 onto a new foundation, one of the things that we found during the Master Plan Implementation Committee, or I was told, was that this is not something that could be done, that building is just not going to be viable. Once you take it down, it's not going to be there. So again, I will wait and see exactly what is said. I, you know, am concerned about the talks about a stage. I think certainly a seasonal covered stage is perfectly fine. But again, where any kind of stage deviates from the master plan, that needs to be put out into the public for comment. And I see I have 12 seconds left. And I have to say this with all due respect, Councilor Tabor, but I am concerned about the fact that the past chair of the Prescott Park Arts Festival advocated so strongly for the festival during the last City Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth Martinson. We can, I get things wrong a lot, so Show of hands that people that are speaking on Prescott Park would like to hear the presentation first, or would you just like to make a comment and then we'll hear the presentation? So just one. Okay, so two. So most are, we're going to keep with this and then we'll come back and we'll certainly have any changes to that would be a public hearing we will go through. So next up, Linnea Grimm on Prescott Park.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. My name is Linnea Grimm, and I am speaking here in 3 capacities this evening. I am co-chair of the city's Arts and Cultural Commission. I am president and CEO of Strawberry Bank Museum, and I am also a resident at 38 Marcy Street. Earlier today, the Arts and Cultural Commission voted to unanimously support Councilor Cook and Tabor's motion that will be coming up a little later this evening. And the committee was in coordination that we really do support the city collaborating with Prescott Park Arts Festival to plan and initiate the improvements to the park infrastructure funded by the festival to support the long-term needs of the organization. As president of Strawberry Bank Museum, a stronger Prescott Parks Arts Festival means a stronger, more vibrant area for all of us in the South End. And so in my capacity as president, I also support it. And then finally, as a resident of 38 Marcy Street, I'm here with my fellow resident, my daughter Carolina, and she had 3 points that she wanted to make as well. Make sure I get these right, okay? First is that we are known as a culture and arts city, and showing support for the Arts Festival in this way will solidify that we are a culture and arts city. Secondly, it will really, improving the infrastructure will help make the park more beautiful in winter, which I absolutely agree with her on. And lastly, it is more likely for field trips and students to be able to go into the park if there is a better infrastructure. And so in all 3 of these capacities that I represent tonight, I am very happy to support the motion that will be coming up.
Thank you, Linnea and Carolina. Next up, Theodore Porter on Crossing Guard Appreciation Day.
Hello, my name is Theodore Porter, and I'm from Portsmouth. I live on 319 Lincoln Avenue. Last year I came to petition for Crossing Guard Appreciation Day, and the City Council agreed. It's coming up, so I just wanted to remind everyone because I'm very excited. It's on the second Tuesday in May. This year it's on May 12th. So on May 12th, I hope you'll thank your crossing guards for all the amazing work they do. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Theodore. We'll break for a second just to thank Theodore again. It's hard to start something. It's even harder to keep it going, and it takes something like that to show up and make sure that we get it into the second year. It's a sign of grit. So you're on to big things, and we'll make sure that we remember to aptly celebrate it on May 12th. Thanks, Theodore.
I still got my sticker, Theodore.
Next up, Tyler Goodwin on Prescott Park, or PPAF stage.
Good evening, city councilors and staff. My name is Tyler Goodwin of 38 Walford Lane here in Portsmouth. I'm speaking tonight as both a longtime resident of Portsmouth, but also in my capacity as chair of Prescott Park Arts Festival. Since joining the board in 2020 and many years prior to that, there have been ongoing discussions about the critical importance of an upgraded stage for the festival to operate with. Simply put, the long-term viability of the Arts Festival depends on it. The time is now. We seek permission from the city to add tremendous value to the park at no cost to the city itself. A new stage will not change the scope or the mission of the festival. It will, however, make what's already existed there for many decades safer, more consistent, and more financially sustainable. I'm excited that we're materially moving forward with that conversations tonight because our donors, sponsors, and the wider community are ready to rock, no pun intended. The festival represents celebration, economic vitality, and our community's commitment to accessibility. is truly a beacon of positivity and unification in an era too often marred by negativity. Thank you for your consideration and thoughtfulness as we chart a path forward that ensures the long-term sustainability of a cultural staple that we're so lucky to have here in Portsmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Next, Jameson French on Prescott Park stage.
Good evening. I'm Jamie French, 45 Driftwood Lane, and I guess I've been involved with the Arts Festival since its earliest days. I was on the second year of the independent board a long time ago and served for 8 years then, and then was a trustee of the trust funds for 17 years. I think I was the longest serving one. There may be somebody since, but and then back in 2015 I came back on as chair and served during the very challenging times of the late teens. It's now very satisfying to see that 6 years into Courtney Perkins' leadership, with a strong board led by Tyler Goodwin now, that the festival's thriving and has a very positive relationship with both the neighborhood and the city. Discussions about a permanent and covered stage have been going most of the time I've been involved with the festival. It's important to remember that a permanent stage was part of the 1964 master plan for the park. I was chair of the festival during the most recent master planning process. At that time, a large majority of the public input supported a permanent and covered stage. Sadly, that master plan, an expensive and thorough process, must now have a price tag that's both unrealistic and probably impossible in the context of today's economic uncertainty. I think it's time to separate the stage project from the master plan and allow the festival to move forward with private funding to raise the money needed to build a safe and covered structure. Nearly 25 years ago, Portsmouth participated in a community cornerstone project sponsored by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. As I recall, close to 900 residents voted on the 10 most important cornerstones, those physical places or community gathering spaces that meant the most to them. Prescott Park and the Arts Festival topped the list. Strawberry Bank and the Music Hall followed a few ways back. It has been for more than 50 years that the Arts Festival has presented quality theatrical and musical performances that are accessible to everyone in this community, whatever your means. Those audiences, often 3 generations of families, have become an economic driver for our thriving tourist economy. I hope the Council will support moving forward with the Arts Festival to enable the dream of a much-needed permanent covered stage to be fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Colin, we'll come to you at the end as we have a rule that Portsmouth residents come first. Colin McKenna. We'll just wait until we got to go through all the Portsmouth residents. And then we'll come back. Patty, is it Gormley? Thank you, Patty.
Hi, Patty Gormley, Liberty Common, Rye, New Hampshire. As a newcomer, I've only been here about 32 years.
Oh, sorry, Patty. I didn't. We'll come back to you too. I'm so sorry.
That was a warm-up.
That was a warm-up, and you crushed it. So just do what you did. We got your name absolutely correct. So we'll rock and rolling. Kirsten Mahoney on Prescott Park. Oh, looks like you got a ringer. Okay.
You got the junior partner in our marriage this evening.
Yeah, I would agree.
Sean Mahoney, 27 Austin Street. I just wanted to echo the comments that Jamie and Tyler have made about Prescott Park Arts Festival. I think it's one of, if not the greatest, artistic gems that Portsmouth offers. It's particularly pertinent for families who have limited economic resources to go down and enjoy the arts right on the Piscataqua River. About 10 years ago, I was involved with fundraising for toilets at Prescott Park. It's now called the Pavilion or the Prop. And if you think it was hard raising money for a shed to go over the stage at Prescott Park, you can imagine what it's like raising money for toilets. So I think that there will be a lot of support for this project privately, and people who really care about the Arts Festival will make it happen. And I wanted to thank Councilor Tabor and Councilor Cook for their leadership on this and support that motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Next, Lee Frank on Prescott Park stage.
Good evening, counselors. My name is Lee Frank. I'm the Development Director at Prescott Park Arts Festival. I'm also a Portsmouth resident at 169 Madison Street, where I live with my wife and our 3 kids. Since the first time I happened upon a performance in Prescott Park while on a walk with my wife and at the time infant daughter back in 2007 or 8, I've been in awe of this incredible asset that we have in our community. Musical theater and concerts of this quality in such a beautiful outdoor setting offered for a recommended optional donation is really something that is special. It's not something that most communities have. The festival creates a gathering place during our cherished and way too short summer months. It's where families, friends, and neighbors come together to make memories. First dates, milestone celebrations, a child's first live performance, a movie under the stars, a first summer job. The festival is part of the fabric of our city. I'm here tonight to express my strong support for the proposed public-private partnership and to speak directly to what I know is a central question. Can this be funded? From my perspective, and based on countless conversations with donors, sponsors, and community members over my 8 years as development director and my 19 years living in Portsmouth, the answer is yes. There is real energy behind this project. People immediately understand what this stage represents, not just for the festival, but for Portsmouth as a whole. They see it as a lasting investment in a shared public space. What makes this opportunity especially compelling is that it allows the community to build something together and then give it back to itself. Through private fundraising, individuals and businesses will come together to support the creation of this stage. And once it's built, it becomes city property, an asset owned by and available to everyone. It will, of course, enhance the Arts Festival, but it will also serve school performances, local organizations, cultural programming, and community events for years to come. That broader, lasting impact is exactly what inspires philanthropy in the first place. It's why I'm confident we will be able to rally the support needed to make this happen. This is more than a capital project. It's a chance for the community to invest in itself, to create something enduring, and to place it in the public trust for generations to come. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Lee. Next, Jim Lee on the 3 Rs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Jim Lee, 520 Sagamore Avenue. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation for whoever made the decision to print the agenda on both sides of the paper. My wife has railed against that for some time now and punching me in the ribs saying, look at that, they just printed on one side of the paper. So you've cut your paper use in half. Congratulations. To the 3 Rs, reading, writing, and arithmetic, I'd like to talk about the school board and the school board budget, specifically the meeting minutes from April 1st. I think they are deficient in especially the arithmetic part. As a Portsmouth taxpayer, I appreciate the effort to improve the budget process, but I'd like to be direct about a few concerns raised in the Finance Committee meeting. There's acknowledgement that enrollment is declining while some staffing levels, particularly at the high school, may exceed typical benchmarks. I believe the public should clearly see how staffing is being adjusted in response to that trend. The discussion around the 207 account is especially concerning. If more than 40 full-time positions are funded outside the main operating budget and are not clearly visible, then the public is not seeing a complete and accurate picture of staffing or total cost. So I'd like to make 3 specific requests. That future budgets clearly publish the total number of full-time positions, including all positions currently funded through the 207 account or any other off-budget sources. Second, that a simple, easy-to-read year-over-year comparison, such as the proposed Delta report, be included as standard part of the budget presentation. And third, that the district provide a clear summary of student enrollment trends alongside staffing levels so the public can understand how those two are aligned. These are not unreasonable requests. They're basic elements of transparency and accountability. Strong reporting builds trust, and trust is essential when you're asking taxpayers to support the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good suggestions. Next up, Brooks Stevens on RAP, Resident Area Parking Program.
We're going to have a session on RAP at some point this evening.
Next meeting.
It's the next meeting. So tonight is the first reading of that. So the public hearing will happen at the provided it makes it through tonight. It would be at the May 4th City Council meeting. Where there'll be a much larger, and you won't be limited by a timer, just on your heart's content.
I'll hold my thoughts to that meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brooks. Next, we have Pete Huda on Prescott Park and Community Power. Let's see if you can do both in 3 minutes, Petra.
I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
Pedro to Portsmouth. Okay, good evening. I want to address the motion on Prescott Park. First of all, Mayor, I know I had my hand up, but if there was a presentation, it would have been super if it was in the packet.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
And this just keeps on happening. So I want to address the motion. Just 2 weeks ago, on April 6th, the council voted to request a report back on the potential changes to Phase 1A of the master plan. This was the appropriate first step to gather facts and understand the scope and allow for informed decision making. What we have tonight is not that. There are no materials in the packet. I haven't seen them. They weren't in there. For the rest of the residents to see. There's no defined scope, there's no plans, there's no cost estimate, there's no analysis, yet the council is now being asked to initiate improvements on public land. This is a significant leap, and it bypasses the very process you just voted to follow. Put simply, you are being asked to approve something that has not been clearly defined. This is not due diligence, this is not good governance. There is also a broader issue here. The Prescott Park Master Plan, adopted in 2017, modified in 2022, establish a clear, transparent process for how changes are evaluated and approved. If Phase 1A is going to be altered again, it should be done in the same way, with committee review, staff analysis, public input, and then council action. This motion does none of that. At the same time, the city has already has $7.8 million authorized for Phase 1A. Work has not yet begun. That phase focuses on critical infrastructure, flood mitigation, stormwater management, and raising historic structures. We have seen the consequences of delay. The flooding of 22 and again in 24 made this clear. Resiliency is not optional. It should be the first priority. So why are we talking about new improvements before addressing fundamental issues that protect the park itself? There is also a concern about the purpose of this motion. It explicitly ties improvements to supporting the long-term needs of the Prescott Park Arts Festival. That raises a fundamental question. Are we prioritizing a public asset or a private user of that asset? This is public land given to the city for the benefit of the residents. Any permanent changes, especially infrastructures, must be evaluated through that lens first. Even if privately funded upfront, these improvements carry long-term public implications, maintenance and control and use. Finally, there is an issue of transparency. The public has not seen the underlying discussions, the conditions being referenced, or any of the proposed solutions. After years of delay and significant taxpayer investment in engineering work, moving forward without that transparency undermines public trust. This is not how the process should work. The path forward is straightforward. Provide the staff report, define the scope, align it with Phase 1A, and allow public review, then bring it back for proper discussion. Until then, this motion is premature and should not move forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Next up, Rick Beckstead on concern on meeting minutes.
I'd just like to wait until everybody gets the packet, obviously. Good evening, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. I'm going to sidetrack really quick on this whole thing with Prescott Park. My family, my father's company that started 40 years ago this year, volunteered and rebuilt and repaired that stage multiple times. A very simple ask of suspending the rules. If anyone wanted to speak after the presentation, could be taken up by the council. Now, what I've just gone and handed you, I handed you the meeting minutes of, the agenda that was produced in March 16th of this year. And under that, clearly it says the city manager's informational items, meeting minutes update. So during that meeting, we actually had 4 councilors that were concerned about the meeting minutes. Councilor Tabor, Councilor Cook, Councilor Hopkins, and the mayor himself actually stressed some concerns. At the end of that meeting, and I watched the meeting on YouTube this evening to refresh myself, there would be an update that would actually happen on April 6th, the very next meeting. Now, if you look on page 2, these are the meeting minutes that you actually adopted. I would suggest that you suspend the rules and retract them so that you could have more information, because you've got 4 councilors that stressed concerns and you just accepted the minutes. Here's the thing about minutes. This is a public document. This is Portsmouth's history. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, our community will rely on some of those to be able to understand where the council, as it was sitting, was thinking. Councilor Tabor went and said it. We talked about that as far as with the Whalen Wall parking lot. And we were able to go and understand what the parking requirements and what they did back 50 years ago. It's essential. It's crucial. Action minutes don't speak anything. So, and the last page I'll go and I'll say is on from April 6th. And on April 6th, you were told by the city manager at the end of the meeting on the 16th that there would be an update. And I just basically listed the city manager informational items, and there is no update at all. I think that we should really go and have a conversation about this, maybe from the public. Maybe you schedule a public hearing. This is a process. And when I served 2 years on the council, 2 years as mayor, any process is dictated by the city council, not the staff and not the city manager. This is your names that will go on this for history, for generations. You can look up the 4 years on any given day, not on YouTube, but in writing, at what our thoughts were, what our actions were, what we discussed. Those meeting minutes are crucial. I don't understand why I don't want to say dumbing it down, but we are. So now everyone has to review from YouTube. That's unfair, even if we timestamp it, even if Councilor Hopkins went and said we do a transcript from it. I mean, a transcript of word for word. I mean, Kelly Barnaby sat up there for 38 years. I mean, and you could go to any one of her meetings and understand what the council was thinking and saying. It's crucial and important. The council needs to take a stance on this. We need to go and speak up for the future of Portsmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Your Honor, we have Esther Kennedy on Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll go to Esther and then back to our friends from Ryan Elliott.
Good evening, Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave, Portsmouth. First, I'd like to remind everyone that this week is Administrative Assistance Week, on the 22nd in particular, and I'm saddened to see that we have not done a proclamation, because I think that's a huge group in the city of Portsmouth, over 100 people, I believe, and looking quickly at the staffing. So I just hope that the city council can make comment to all the people that support you all in your job and all those other middle management to upper management people in our city. Second, I'd like to support Beth, and in particular what Petra said. I truly believe there's a process that we need to follow. I'm very grateful that people in the community would like to look at building a stage, and I commend them on doing that, but I think there's a process. Before we move through, we need to move through that process. And if we're going to pull the stage out separately, we have the right to do that. However, again, we need to do it through a process. We can't just do it on a whim. And lastly, I agree with Jim in those meeting minutes that were April 1st of the school board budget committee. And I was saddened to see the minutes. I've shared that before in our work session. But I'm particularly worried about the 40 employees that are not in the general fund. And one of the reasons I'm very much worried about it is the fact that our federal funds are deteriorating as we speak. We still haven't gotten our IDA funds. We also are changing over to a new Medicaid system, so we have no idea what those funds are going to be. And we have our special ed aid is in quandary on what that will be. So you have 3 entities in that fund that supposedly is funding those positions, and yet we're not sure we're going to have the funds. I would hate to see our special ed population teachers go away because you didn't put them in the general fund, or you didn't have the funds, or you didn't even know about them per the meeting minutes. So I would encourage you as we go through the budget season to spend some time on that information. It was in their own words, as I like to put it, from the school board, and I would encourage you to read it before we move forward in the school board budget. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Esther. I would echo the administrative day in Portsmouth that anybody's had the luxury of, or not luxury, it's usually the opposite. When you have to call in, look for the mayor, you get to speak with Joanna Deemer. I call her the real mayor of Portsmouth. She knows literally everything. And Jessica Griffin, both two powerhouses among a lot of folks throughout the city that answer the phones. So sometimes people are less than enthused to be calling the city of Portsmouth, and do so with grace and get them what they need. So I will take this time to apologize for not having a proclamation with a lot of whereases, and just say very, very clearly that we very much love the work that we do, and we appreciate you on a day-to-day basis. That goes unsaid too often, but thank you, Esther, for reminding me. It's an opportunity to say that today. So thank you for that. We're going back to the public comment, and we're going to go to Colin McKenna from Elliott.
Hello, council members. Colin McKenna, 1 Wild Rose Lane in Elliott. I lived in Portsmouth for about 8 years. Enjoyed my time here. Bought a house recently over in Elliott. I'm a musician here. I'm in 2 bands. I've had the privilege to play on the stage at Prescott Park, and it's a wonderful stage to play on. The night that we played, there was no rain in the forecast, but there's a little microclimate down there on the park, and we got some mist from the ocean. So you can imagine what mist does to musical instruments and $1,000 wooden instruments. So not that a permanent stage would prevent things like mist, but it provides the musicians, the nationally touring bands that come through, a safe place to put their instruments, to protect them. Part of the reason the park gets so much attention is a talent that we're able to attract to this to the stage. We want to keep attracting that talent, and one of those things is a more built structure that can be better for photos and just better for the equipment in general. So that's my first point. My second point, I just want to stress the importance of the park and the stage and continuing what they're doing over there. Portsmouth is a smaller music scene. Someone who's kind of come up through that scene. I've seen a lot of people stay in this area because there's something for them here. We're constantly losing musicians and talented artists to bigger cities like Boston, Portland, New York, and whatnot. And it's really important to have a feeder system. So as a band starting out in the city, it's great to have something like WSCA, smaller stage that you can play at, and then something up to Prescott Park where you're opening for like a nationally touring band. And that kind of thing keeps musicians and artists around here. We risk losing those people to some of the bigger cities, and I think that's one of the benefits of having a big stage in this community. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Colin. And Patty Gormley from Rye.
Patty Gormley, 7 Liberty Common, Rye, New Hampshire. I just want to thank you all for all the balls that you juggle and all that you do at all given time. It's a lot. I was the ex-development director at Gather for 8 years, so I know a little bit about how things work behind the scenes and what needs to happen to make things grow. And I will say that joining the board at Prescott Park has been a wonderful opportunity to see happy people and people that are excited to share in arts and in culture, and the whole grassroots part of Prescott Park is just one of the many beautiful reasons that our city is exploding. I mean, development is everywhere, and the people that are moving here are so fortunate to be spoiled by the beautiful things that the Seacoast offers. I don't think anybody wants Prescott Park to change. It doesn't need to be at Thompson's Point in Portland. It doesn't need to be at the Hat Shell down in Boston. It just needs to be our Prescott Park, our arts festival that doesn't change. It just becomes safe. It's pretty simple. It just needs to be secure. It needs to have a safe footprint that everyone can accept and enjoy. It doesn't need to go through everybody's time and effort every year, every few years. Just getting the right people in the right place at the right time and getting something done is the most important thing to ensure that our little grassroots arts festival actually finally takes a leap forward. And I think we've got the people in place, both at the festival and on the council, to make things finally happen and have a permanent structure that is just acceptable to all. And the benefit for all of us to preserve our beautiful grassroots area. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. All right. With that, I'd wait a motion, seeing none on Zoom, to bring forth the presentation.
Your Honor, I move to bring up item.
To suspend the rules and.
I move to suspend the rules and bring up item 13B.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Your Honor, as Peter approaches, I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to have us present the state of affairs for Phase 1A and to give you all an update. So, Peter, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Peter Rice, Director of Public Works. As you may recall, the 2017 master plan covered the entire park and was pretty ambitious in its vision. However, due to cost increases and funding availability, the project's been changed. The initial master plan was anticipated to cost about $16 million and would have been financed through the revenues associated with the McIntyre project. This plan has since been scaled back to focus mainly on protecting historic structures and adjacent structures to the park. The current plan does not address Prescott Park stage. This is not a Prescott Park, the Arts Festival stage. This is focusing on the historic structures and the infrastructure in that area. Future decisions that the council make are policy decisions that aren't necessarily associated with this project. If I could have a second slide. The brief presentation will cover the project team, how we got here, where we are now, and the recommended alternative, and open for discussion afterwards. Next slide, please. The project team associated with Phase 1A is still led by Weston and Sampson. They are the same firm that's been with us since 2017. We also have Preservation Timber Framing. They're a very respected historic timber framing company that works closely with structures in the city, specifically at Strawberry Bank, as well as the Players Ring. Next slide. This is a very important slide in that it kind of tells the whole tale of Phase 1A and why Phase 1A is coming back to you all in a little slightly different version. Since we last approved the version of Phase 1A, additional information has come out relative to storm surge elevations, and the total elevation increase to the historic buildings is now 6 feet. It's an additional 2.5 feet above what it was previously, and this additional elevation impacts the grading around the whole area, and it spills into the Liberty Pole lawn and the trees associated with that if we followed the original Phase 1A plan, which was raising Water Street up to be pretty much the same grade as the raised buildings. As was cited, the 2022 and the 2024 flooding really highlighted the importance of doing these infrastructure improvements to protect these historic resources. So the next slide. The approved master plan, the original goals associated with the 2017 master plan can be summarized really in one statement: parks first. Park first. That vision, among other things, maintained pedestrian corridors and access to water views at all times while protecting historic structures, maintaining public forum space, being aware of the impacts on the neighborhood, and ensuring a continued presence for the arts. There are a number of other ones, but they're all pretty much come around that concept of park first vision. Next slide, please. The original Phase 1A was limited to raising and mothballing the Shaw Building. The council at the time it was presented requested that we explore what it would take to build out the Shaw Building and renovate as well as replace the lean-to and garage with a significant addition which would house most of the Prescott Park's Art Festival functions. Due to high cost and flooding, reinforcing the challenge associated with the historic structures, the council asked that we adjust our focus to protecting the historic buildings, which currently includes the feasibility of raising the Players Ring as well. As I mentioned, the biggest change to this most recent version is that additional elevation necessary, and this requires revising and revisiting the grading plan and how we're going about addressing that concern. Next slide, please. This figure shows the boundaries of the initial Phase 1A, which is the solid yellow line, as well as the adjustment in scope to include the Players Ring, which is the dashed line in the area. Next slide, please. Currently, we are in design, pretty much building off the last version of the Phase 1A, and hopefully this evening with some additional input from the City Council, we'll be able to settle on a concept that's acceptable to everyone. We anticipate, once receiving final approvals for permits, that we'll be able to finalize the design and hopefully go to construction next spring. Next slide, please. This is an overview of what our proposed layout is, and there's additional images that I'll go to afterwards that'll give you a better feel for what this is, because this is not easy to read and there's a lot of text. But what it entails is raising the Shaw Building, adding a new garage and lean-to at a higher elevation as well, and raising the Players Ring out of the flood risk in order to minimize impact to the change in elevations, to the impacts to the Liberty pole lawn, as well as the trees that are adjacent to Water Street. We're proposing to move the building back and create a brick retaining wall similar to the Oracle House down the street. This approach will minimize the regrading along Water Street. And if we could see the next slide. If you can see on the lower right-hand corner is the picture of the Oracle House. You can see that it has a raised brick retaining wall with a nice decorative fence around it. The concept looking down is to pick the Players Ring up and move it back. You can imagine if we left the Players Ring in the existing location and created a 6-foot wall adjacent to the sidewalk, it would be a very awkward feel to that area. So by moving it back, we create a little green space for the Players Ring to be able to entertain and to have space for people to queue up for shows and things like that. That would be a raised elevation across to a new elevation of the Shaw Building. We are anticipating building a new lean-to and a new garage. Those would house the functions of the park operations, and that retaining wall would continue along. The Water Street would come up a couple of feet, maybe 3 feet total, but the grading would not impact the adjacent trees and would minimize the overall impact to that lawn area. Additional slides, please. Another slide. These just show, the next few slides just show different perspectives of the proposed approach. So The intent here is to not preclude decisions that the council may make depending upon discussion of the proposed project or the proposed motion, but really just to provide a snapshot into where we're at in the process. We were not planning on presenting this information for a little while, but the request to report back of where we are at was brought forward. So we thought this was a good opportunity to kind of see, so folks could see where we were at in terms of the process and what we were thinking. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if any councilors have any.
Councilor Tabor.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Peter. So the master plan had always envisioned the Shaw moving towards Marcy Street and a row of buildings that would include a stage. Now we're looking at a raised terrace for the Shaw and the lean-to. So where does that leave a place for the stage?
There's a number of opportunities to provide alternate grading along the backside of the Shaw building. So instead of tapering it down gently, you could build an area that would be a stage could slide back to. The stage could slide back to a location, if you go along the edge of the players' ring and the formal garden, there's a walkway or path that runs down to the what we call the railroad, the water, the river railroad, but it just drops down into the water. So there's opportunity to work in that area from a grading standpoint. The master plan never clearly defined the stage location. It had a number of options that were presented and discussed, and there was never clear consensus as to what the final decision was throughout the process that I've been involved with, and that's been the implementation process. We've had a number of opportunities to bring these various concepts back to the council, and one of those concepts did include having a stage tight against the Shaw building with some support buildings being added as well. The cost associated with that was significant, and the direction from the council was that scale back and focus on protecting the buildings. The challenge with replacing the lean-to and the garage is that it displaced operational staff in the park, and I know that doesn't seem like a big deal to the average person that just looks at the park operations, but it's critical to have staff on site and not coming in every day, spending an hour and a half unloading equipment, loading equipment to do the projects there and do the work there. So from an operational standpoint, having the lean-to and the garage still in the operational sense was important. So, obviously, this is something that, will be discussed more as we move forward to finalizing this design.
Right, and I think you're absolutely right. It's better if we can have the folks taking care of the park have access to their equipment on site. But from the 2016 document and even all through the slide presentations of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, there was the notion that the stage would back up to the Shaw, or a new building we would add with the Shaw, and that would be the green room and the backstage area for the stage. So I think it was important that we surface all this before the process went further, because really the old concepts for the stage don't work in this large terrace.
I would disagree respectfully. There's adequate space to address the needs of the stage and work. It would entail some regrading of the area, but raising that area, you either raise the building 6 feet and you have a very precipitous space around it, or you grade it in a manner that overflows into the Liberty Pole lawn and suffocate the trees adjacent to those areas. There aren't a lot of options to make up 6 feet of grade and not move things around a little bit. You can do a retaining wall on the back side of the stage side of the Shaw Building and create that space. So you're not precluding the ability to utilize that space by proceeding with this type of terrace situation. So I understand what you're saying, and it is hard to balance the need of moving forward with this project to protect these historic structures without having a grading challenge, which means you got to adjust the elevations to make it work. And if we wait to come to a final decision relative to the stage and the support for the, we're going to continue to put those structures at risk.
Last question. So if we voted tonight to include in the planning for phase one a new stage, you think that's doable?
I would not encourage you to include it in this project. It is doable. The challenge, the process to get an approved concept and stage would slow down the effort that we're currently under. I would encourage you to bifurcate it and make sure whatever we do does not preclude the ability to come up with a stage and support area, but let that go on a separate track. I mean, obviously this is a policy decision, and it's I will implement what you guys decide, but having been through many public projects and knowing how it can, just the comment, it was, why is it taking so long where we're at? I mean, when we stall a project and revisit options and ideas, it oftentimes makes it more challenging to get it started again, and it slows things down. We have a little bit of momentum right now to move forward with this critical portion of the improvements, and I would encourage you to continue that. You could, if you modified your request, to say how could you modify the design to make sure you didn't preclude the ability to create a stage. I mean, that would be something I would think we could achieve and not delay the project significantly.
Okay. I would just point out that since the 2016 council approved a stage to go through the permitting process, it's been 10 years.
Sure, but that was a non-covered stage with no permanent support, and the motion that you're making at this point is a covered stage, which, based on the previous feedback that I participated in and received, it was not uniformly supported.
Councillor Hopkins?
I have two questions. First one is simple. Can you tell me what the purpose is of the building that is closest to the water? In the mock-up, there's Players Ring, there's Shaw, there's Garage, and then there's one that's right on the water. Can you?
The Sheaf Building is one of the oldest buildings in the state of New Hampshire. It was relocated from approximately where the existing bridge to Pierce Island is now to that location. I believe it was in the 80s that was relocated. There's no technical purpose for it other than it houses, I think, the New Hampshire Art Society or
New Hampshire Art Association.
Association, thank you.
Through a license agreement.
And
with
the
city.
Gundalow also does some functioning out of that.
Thank you. And the Liberty
Pole?
Common, which one is that?
That is, if you're looking at Water Street, it's on the right-hand side. It's the pole that has the shield on it.
Yep, okay.
It was.
That's the gorgeous
Yep.
gardens. Okay. And then my second question, kind of moving forward with all of this, because I agree with both things that have been presented here. I agree with, preserving Prescott Park Music Festival, and a permanent stage is vital for that. A covered stage is vital for that. And I agree with the concerns, that Beth and Petra have brought forward of, how can we do this in a way that is wise? To me, it makes sense that you would update the infrastructure and get the drainage and get all of the things right before putting a permanent stage on there. But it sounds like, to my freshman counselor ears, that there's some history that's mired through all of this, through what this plan said, what that plan said. And I would just ask for more clarity there with personally, I would, again, choose, we got to get the land right before we add. Like, why would we put a permanent stage and then have to do something about it whenever the flooding got worse if we hadn't addressed that first? So I would like clarity in that.
Thank you, Councilor Hopkins. Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hopefully I can provide Councilor Hopkins some clarity with some of my questions for Department of Public Works Director Rice. I appreciate the work that's gone into thinking about saving these buildings. Those cultural resources are really critical for the city, and the amended plan, I think, is important to for everybody to understand the need to further elevate these buildings is really important. So thank you for presenting that today. The change that I've seen in this plan that I think is really critical is that the Shaw Building stays where it's essentially in the same location with respect to the river. As far as distance from the river, it just moves back on its lawn space and gets elevated, which is very different than the initial plan, I think Councilor Tabor pointed out, and that the garage gets rebuilt versus being torn down and making room for a green room space, which was anticipated for Prescott Park Arts Festival, and a stage, which was part of the plan. Even if it wasn't part of Phase 1A, it was anticipated to go into that space with later funding. So without that space in place, you've highlighted some other spaces where you could have a stage even with this project moving forward. And I've asked you questions about this before. Would you say that the best space is right behind the Shaw after it's moved, or up against that line, that delineated line where the players' ring is separated from the formal garden, that sidewalk, I think, that extends kind of as a gravel pathway? Are we talking about coming to that space or coming beyond that space, I guess is what I'm saying.
The concern, if you run along the wall of the formal garden, which the path between the players' ring and the formal garden, if you run that line through, bringing it back to where the wall ends, and having that from that space, which is, I don't know, another 80 feet back from the existing, is a reasonable spot to slide the stage back to. There is a utility corridor that's going to go right along that pathway, and we just need to be cognizant of where that is. If we need to get access to that, we wouldn't want to build a building over it. So we would just need to make sure whatever structures are built on either side of that. So if the desire is to move the space back to gain more performance lawn, we would suggest moving everything to the Shaw side of that corridor, leaving that open. If the feeling is that that space is not necessarily required, then staying on the bridge side of that corridor would be appropriate.
Okay, and as a follow-on question to that, because there's no longer, I guess, the ability to build that adjacent green room space, because the existing shed building and garage building would be essentially being rebuilt next to Shaw, the stage would need access to kind of a green room space. I would call them ancillary structures of some type. Right now, with this plan as it exists, that vision is just to leave it as is with essentially temporary buildings in the park enclosed by a fence for now?
So the challenge for me and the department is we are not in charge of those functions, and at this point we are trying to just continue and allow the Arts Festival to have a functional space throughout this construction process, to make sure we take into consideration not impacting their operations. And I would envision that if the desire was not to, or if the decision was not to build permanent structures, that the current trailer locations would continue. The benefit of that is that you could utilize the space over the utility pipe without, it'd be temporary structures, and so you could move them in and move them out without having to worry about location of those buildings. I understand the importance of consistent space. However, there may be benefits to having temporary structures there. There are means of screening them in a more aesthetically pleasing manner, so that they don't necessarily, aren't as much of an eyesore. I know Courtney's done a good job over the last few years, making them more aesthetically, less of an impact visually. So it ultimately comes down to the policy decisions that you all make and the direction we get. We will implement. What staff heard at previous reviews and previous input from council was that protect the existing buildings was the priority, and that resources weren't there for a large addition as part of this project. So therefore, the opportunity to leave a shed and a garage, which are relatively inexpensive portions of the project, are there. If the decision is to remove those and to build an addition in those spaces, there can be modification to that, and there's an interface of a historic building with a new building, and those are code type things that are workable. We've looked at that before. We know how to address that. So it doesn't preclude doing that. There would be some stranded costs, if we couldn't reuse those structures. But if they're new structures, you could move them to another location if you had to.
So the last follow-on I have on this subject in particular is the council would need to make a motion for a stage and ancillary structures for Prescott Park Arts Festival to move forward, for them to self-fund, if we're asking them to self-fund it in the park, for you to change your thinking around the planning for the park.
That would help make it very clear what we need to do. Currently, I feel comfortable that we're not precluding some type of action that could be taken. But clear direction is always really important for us. It makes it easier for us when we're working with our consultants.
Okay, and one final question that's unrelated as to other improvements in the park. I've had some concerns because I've been told repeatedly that we can't improve sidewalks in different parts of the park, or we can't replace the fence because we have a Prescott Park master plan in place that dictates what the next steps are, and those things are not necessarily in next steps. What do we need to do to get to a place where the Department of Public Works can move forward with improvements to sidewalks and fencing while we're currently in this situation where we cannot fund the rest of the Prescott Park master plan?
That you're correct. That is something we've been wrestling with. The fencing along the seawalls are in desperate need of replacement. There's a lot of brick areas that are not optimal. There's buried underground utilities that are aren't they need to be replaced. There's lighting that's needs to be replaced. There's a lot of things that need to be done, and we are holding off because of the uncertainty relative to the overall master plan. Clear direction relative to what if you're revisiting the master plan and saying, yes, there was a previous master plan that had a much broader vision. If the council decided to say, hey, listen, we understand that's an aspirational plan, but we would like to focus on the basic functions of the park and to make those investments that are necessary to improve the fencing, improve the sections of seawall that need to be reworked. They don't have appropriate, it's filter fabric behind the walls that keeps the water from flowing back and forth and washing out, and if you've noticed, it's subsiding in its section. That needs to be worked on. There's quite a bit of infrastructure that needs to be addressed, so having the ability to refocus would be beneficial, and getting clear direction from council on that would be good, because every time we look at it, it's like, well, that's not consistent with the master plan, so we really shouldn't be doing those types of changes at this time.
Thank you.
We'll go Councilor Bagley, then Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Your Honor. Director Rice, is it feasible, maybe not ideal, but is it feasible to build a garage and shed anywhere on Pierce Island instead of in Prescott Park?
Yes, it is.
My suggestion, I know it hasn't been well received in the past, but I really think the Sheaf building, the building on the water, is historically important, actually very important. I think the Players Ring is very important to Prescott Park. The Shaw building, I think, is kind of, and then certainly the garage and the shed, they're secondary to all the historic buildings that we have in town. I mean, it was an old warehouse. It's not publicly accessible. It doesn't have ADA bathrooms. I could be supportive of moving DPW operations to Pierce Island, to protecting the Players Ring, and just letting nature take its course with the Shaw building over time, and moving forward with a green room and a covered stage. I think this is, in the economic climate we're in, we can't have all of our things. And I'd much rather protect the Arts Festival and the stage than the Shaw building. And I know that might not be a popular opinion, but that's where I stand. And to do that, I think we would need to move DPW to Pierce Island.
Just, if I may, one piece of additional information. The Shaw Building is one of the oldest buildings of this type in the state. It's a marine warehouse that is historically protected, and it really deserves the attention. And I don't disagree that the shed addition and the garage are not necessarily historically significant, but I'm not an expert historian. But I know I've been spoken to many times about the importance of the Shaw building.
I've yet to meet anybody that's traveled specifically to Portsmouth to visit that building.
I don't disagree with that, but I would say speak to the local historians and they'll let you know.
Councilor Bullock.
Thank you.
Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Director Pugh-Rice. I love the Prescott Park Arts Festival. I wish there was a concert there every night. I love Prescott Park. I also appreciate Shaw Building and the Sheaf Building. But I trust your recommendations on this. You are the Director of Public Works. You've been working on this. I don't want the Prescott Park to disappear back into the river. And I don't want to put a brand new covered stage on a park that's going to disappear back into the river. But I do want to support the Prescott Park Arts Festival and find a way where we can get this covered stage. It sounds like it might be funded by a private donor. So I guess I'm just really asking, what's your recommendation for us to take tonight so we can continue the phase one that you've described and either leave room for the stage or, but not throw all these plans wayside just for the stage.
Sure, I'm going to dodge this bullet.
So, just before, there is a motion on the floor or that will come up under the working with Prescott Park. I think it's important, and Peter's done a good job of answering our questions and also opining on things that he spends a lot of time. But there's nothing that we're talking about outside that motion from Councilor Tabor and Councilor Cook having to do with this. This is the report back. So I don't think at this point he needs to opine on that. He can, but there's.
If I may, I will dodge this bullet by saying this is a council policy decision.
Yeah. I want your recommendation.
So I think what's hard, I'll jump in here for a second. So I guess I'll pass the gavel. Hopefully I won't talk too long. So a couple of things, just from the small to the bigger. Peter, I think that the plans look really, really great on the elevation of that, and I know that's a result of having to meet the rising sea levels, but that it looks kind of similar to Oracle House, up the road. I think that could turn into just an amazing thing, and maybe if we play our cards right, some more people are going to be traveling to Portsmouth to see the Shaw than they might do right now. So I think it's well done. I don't look at this and see that it's preclusive of a stage, but what I'm hearing from you saying directly and kind of indirectly is that if we bring that conversation into this, we're going to be having this conversation in 2 years about what we do with the Shaw building and the Players Ring, and that's the danger that we have. I think the funding that we have is good on this. That we have everybody here for the Prescott Park Arts Festival. I'd like to say just a couple of things and ask folks as we move through the process with the stage to keep in mind. One, I think we owe a debt to Courtney Perkins, the executive director of the Prescott Parks Arts Festival. And I say that because I remember where we were as an arts festival as a community. It really found a way to split us against either you were 100% for everything that was going on, or you were 100% against the future of arts in Portsmouth. And that was a tougher situation, and it's really doesn't really do justice to like the nuances around the fact that people probably don't want super loud music at all times, in their life. They want vibrancy, but they want limits to that, and they want us to have a shared understanding of what we're going to do. And I think Courtney did a really good job in terms of implementing, that. And I think that we can all say right now that we're having a different conversation around this than we would have if this was kind of earlier on. I think that we were talking about this in terms of how do we continue all the great things that are happening. And I do think it's important to reflect on the great things that the Arts Festival is. I mean, I'm a dad, a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old. It is super expensive to do just about anything. Like going to the movies is really expensive. You're looking at $100, between tickets and like now they have like, and you're waiting in line and there's like these commemorative things, it's just like, there's so much stuff, and that stuff also exists at Prescott Park Arts Festival. But there is in terms of the lightsabers that my daughters don't need any more of, but it's great to know that if you are a parent and you want to expose your kids not just to art, but just a good time, that exists for you, and it's a suggested donation. And that's something that I think in this day and age when literally the Celtics are like a luxury item, that we can have art in our homes or in our lives by going down to Prescott Park. And so, if the conversation that we're having tonight is how do we move forward with something that, given what could look like a stage that we're talking about, and that's going to come back to it's not going to be, a spoiler alert, we're not going to approve, an undesigned, unseen stage that's going in some place in the Prescott Park right now with a vote of whatever is the council. But I think the idea that we could work collaboratively together on something like that would be a step in a direction that would be collaborative around what this could look like. Because I think of a park first, and then I think of my kid playing soccer behind when we have a show and it's a dad and mom show and not a kid show, and they're playing soccer behind it next to all the trailers. And that is not super park first, in my view. So I think that there's an opportunity to look at this where we are right now, but I do strongly recommend that, there is not a motion on here, but to continue with the work that, I know you will have one in terms of but to keep it on a separate path of like making the work that is gone in here, which I think is incredibly positive, to continue that going forward with the funds that we have, and then to work to see what could be available with more private philanthropy, and deliver something back to the council that we could discuss. But I don't want to stop this. I know you pulled it up fast to get that report back, but if we stop this to kind of include a larger plan, I think we're going to lose what we have, and that's an opportunity to preserve some great historic function or structures and improve the function of that park around Water Street. So that's me saying my piece. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had a motion for the council to consider tonight around implementation of the Prescott Park master plan. And my motion would be to temporarily suspend implementation of the Prescott Park master plan after Phase 1A to focus on basic functions and improvements in the park.
Second?
The reason that I'm raising this is Director Rice said very clearly, we can't make basic improvements right now in the park because we have a master plan in place that's kind of dictating what next steps are. And we do need to implement Phase 1A. That's absolutely critical to save the structures in the park and to deal with drainage. And that Phase 1A is funded and will help us deal with water inundation and help us save these critical buildings, which, by the way, house 2 major arts institutions. I think that that's really important to remember. But we do need to improve sidewalks, and we need to improve lighting, and we need to improve fencing. And this request is just to temporarily suspend the master plan process to allow for those improvements, assuming that we will get to come back to it when we have adequate funding to fund the rest of the master plan. But that could be, for all we know, 20, 30 years down the road, and I don't think we can wait that long for sidewalks.
So Councilor Cook, so this is a separate, this is a on the
Separate.
fly.
Yes,
On
based
the
upon the
fly.
presentation
Okay.
and the questions asked.
Councilor Bagley?
I don't know if there's a second, so I'll second for discussion purposes.
Tabor already seconded.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I fully understand the motion. We're suspending
The Prescott
big
Park-
projects
the
to work
Prescott-
on sidewalks?
The Prescott Park Master Plan that's in place after Phase 1A, this is Phase 1A that was presented to us, but the rest of the plan, just temporarily suspending implementation of that plan so that we can do basic park infrastructure improvements.
Oh, I thought we already had suspended everything after 1A.
So we still have a master plan that's on the record.
We haven't funded it.
We have not
we haven't
funded
funded it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like we have a master plan that dictates, and with DPW Director Rice's answers tonight, it sounds as though that anything that is not in the process of that is not being worked on, and that kind of makes sense, because why would we put money into something that we're not going to, that we're going to move away from? But there are like moving the sunken gardens. I am now, of the mind that until those gardens like sink down, like all the way down, we're not going to move where they are. It just, that
100%.
would be something that is, people would just question why we're doing it, as would I. So there are parts of the master plan that exist and had more funding we might take up or may not, but those are the things that we would be spending. I don't know if I guess I would worry that we suspend it versus we just change it, or eliminate, but like I think that it's a broader conversation than just what would be an unannounced or an noticed change to a master plan that I think would be difficult. But Councilor Bagley.
Could we like place it on file, sort of just like it exists, but it's just somewhere on file?
I would say that if it's a master plan and it was a document that was worked on over 7 years, well, more than that, that we should probably have more than just place it on file. I think we should have a presentation on the master plan and have a public hearing to say to, for, against, given where we are right now, if we're going to go beyond 1A or not, and then vote on that, because there's significant costs that align to that, but I don't think that's what we can, honestly, even suspending right now, I think we would still want to take a formal conversation. Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. That's why the motion was to temporarily suspend, not to alter, because I think that requires a much bigger conversation. This is a plan that many residents worked on for many, many years, and if we're going to alter the plan itself, I think that we need to have lots of public input and discussion. I'm just concerned that we need to make improvements to sidewalks, and we need to be able to replace fencing and lighting in the park so that the park remains safe for everyone to enjoy. I think that's part of the wonderful, the wonderful nature of Prescott Park is that everybody gets to enjoy it, everybody gets to go through it. I've seen the current status of sidewalks and how difficult it is for some people, especially people who need mobility devices to navigate some of those sidewalks. And if we're not doing work on them now because we have a master plan in place that dictates the next steps, and we're not going to implement that for 20, maybe 30 years, then those people will continue to not have access to the park. So I want to make sure that everybody has access for now. And then if we want to talk about the long-term plan, then we should establish discussions around what the master plan will look like and what we can actually implement.
Councilor Tabor? Then
Yeah.
Councilor Hopkins?
I think it's wise to temporarily suspend this master plan until a deeper drive and further council action. I think what we're hearing from Director Rice is once we spend the $7 million that's been already approved for Phase 1A, there really is no funding source. So I think we just have to deal with the reality that it's a wonderful plan that a lot of people contributed to, but it's not realistic in this funding environment. And it ties our hands, as Councilor Cook says, on repairs, on what do we do with the Norway maples, what do we do with the formal gardens whose trees are old, things like that. And so I think it would help us keep the park at its best by not being governed by the dead hand of an unfundable, unrealistic plan. And we'll have to deal with a revision.
Councilor Hopkins?
I would be in support of what Councilor Cook has put forward, because as we heard from everyone in the room, one of the big themes that comes up is that this is accessible. This is accessible to people, no matter budget or ability. And to have, what did you call it, a dead hand? That is morbid. But to have,
I didn't mean to be gruesome.
but to have something that is defunct, I suppose, I don't know what word goes there, but to have something limiting our ability to provide basic, sidewalk and accessibility infrastructure updates seems silly to me, and I would be in favor of however we can navigate around that, so that as part of this phase 1A, there is the, the chance to do all of it at once and make it all better at once, so that people can, so it can remain an accessible festival and park.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify, 1A is not going to cover all those things, so I just want to make sure the expectations are clear.
But I guess my point was more like, if you're out there doing work, I don't know, I guess I don't know how you guys work, so maybe that's a naive thought, but if things are being done and we are only leaving the sidewalks and lighting unattended because of a document, not because of funding or very real, materials and building and staffing and like those things, that just seems silly to me.
Councilor Moreau?
I guess I'm just curious, parliamentary-wise, why we have to suspend the plan. If it has no funding, it's not moving forward without funding, because what you're really asking for is maintenance and upkeep. So I feel like they're two kind of separate conversations, so I guess I don't understand I don't know if there's a legal reason to tie the two together.
It seems like a parliamentary inquiry.
Sure. I put that up for anyone to answer, for the record.
Well, I'm happy to take a crack at it, Councillor. It seems as though some of the discussion from the council is to keep the plan in place absent some other larger public process. I don't know that you need to, but I also think you want to provide clear direction to Public Works. You could, just as a suggestion here, you don't have to address the Prescott Park master plan in the motion. You could simply request a report back from Public Works on a proposed maintenance plan to be implemented following the completion of Phase 1A.
I like that.
It seems to accomplish what you're asking for here, while respecting the master plan and the public process that you also seem to want around it.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you to our legal counsel. I'm happy to accept that as an alteration to the motion if my second is willing to accept it, and if the Director of Public Works, Rice, would consider that adequate to provide the ability to make improvements.
Sure, with the context, putting in the context of a capital improvement plan process, that we would come up with an outline of the types of investments that we'd be looking at in prioritization. So we would then, similar to what we do with like roadways and facilities, we identify aspects of the park that would need attention, and then we would say, this year we're going to be looking at funding this, and we anticipate it to cost a certain amount, and then that would be part of the regular CIP process. That would work really well.
Thank you.
Councilor Bagley?
Thank you, Art. So I'll support any of these motions, because I kind of felt as a councilor when we voted, I guess a couple of years ago, to go forward with 1A, we were also tacitly voting to stop the plan. So I do think at some point it does make sense to have that conversation with the community that this is effectively the Prescott Park master plan now, truncated because the funding doesn't exist. And it does make sense to move forward with small improvements, which I'm sure it'll be difficult to find the funding for them. But, you know, there's no longer this big master plan. It's a kind of a facilities and must-do itemized list, and we should have that conversation over the summer with the community and make sure everybody's on board with it. But, I mean, the financial realities are what they are, so I'd support that. The question I have for Director Rice is, in your presentation, you were looking for feedback. Did we give you the feedback you need?
I believe you did, with the exception of the motion right now was towards the backlog of infrastructure investments that we need to make. So that would be taken care of as part of the CIP process. The second part of that, which you were talking about, was whether we modify 1A to clearly identify what space we would anticipate being available, not necessarily doing anything more than just saying, you know, in general, here are the spaces to work with, and then that would inform the Arts Festival on the available spaces, and they could start a planning process and fundraising process associated with it. So if you made no action on that at all, what I understand is that in general, the approach we're doing right now, or proposing right now, seems to be acceptable. If that's true, we would continue to flesh that out. We'd go through the permitting process. We'd have to go before HDC again. We don't need their approval, but typically we go to them for concurrence, and just their input is critical. We would need to, meet with the state again just to make sure our permits are in place, and then present to you all when we get the opinions of costs and all that, final, to do that public process. So that would be what I would anticipate. So if there was no vote, we would go in that direction. If there was a vote to identify those spaces, we would kind of add a little bit of additional effort and then draw up a couple of, potential future areas, and here's how we'd grade it and that type of thing.
And would that be done through the motion that we await for Councilor Cook and Tabor around working with the Prescott Park Arts Festival to identify infrastructure? Would that suffice?
That's what I was anticipating, yeah.
Okay. And so I guess I'd like to try to bring us and land this plane. The report back was around this. The pictures that we looked at, the Shaw Building, the Players Ring building, and the changes that have gone into more, creating them to be more resilient and grading changes. That seems to be generally supported by council right now in terms of a project that is already a part of the CIP. The second question that has been prompted by the engagement of the Arts Festival and brought forth by a motion is that, given this, what could a stage look like at the Prescott Park Arts, or at Prescott Park? That would be the motion that comes up, and we would decide whether or not we like to see, options for that and what that would look like. I'm taking this a step further, that if we got those options, what I think we would do in terms of adopting them would then be to modify the master plan at some point in the future through publicly, plenty of notice, plenty of conversation around what that would look like in the future after getting options back of what this could look like as a park, 1A, and then where a stage might sit. Is that a fair recounting of what you would think would be something that your team could work within?
Yeah, I just would want clarity in terms of whether we were working with our consultant to come up with the concept plan, or whether we're just identifying spaces for the Arts Festival to do the concept plan. I just need clarification on that.
I think before expending city funds on this, I think that would have to come from the Arts Festival in terms of what those, I mean, spaces, like, I drew some places that I think it would be great on this map, but like, you know, directing it away so the sound goes out more versus in. But yeah, I think that spaces, like getting that's the collaborative, but like whether or not we're going to get 3D renderings of what this would look like, I think that would be out of what we have scoped right now.
Okay.
But collaborating with the Prescott Park Arts Festival to give them the information of like giant conduit right here, don't look at that, would be something that, again, I think that we need to bring back, but no action, I just want to be 100% as clear as I can, from my perspective, would happen without us updating the master plan to this. I think that we owe that to ourselves, and whether or not we think this is a good idea, and there's so many times that, you know, I'm reminded that what I think is a good idea is, you know, kind of secondary to what Portsmouth wants. I think there's a lot of appetite for something like this, but we have to go through that process, and would expect us to do any kind of large-scale change would be a part of an amendment to the master plan as a way to go forward at some future date. Okay. Councilor Cook. Oh, I guess we can call. Is there a call? So the question is right now on the infrastructure amendment, or to look at.
Motion to temporarily suspend?
No, not the, no, we modified it to be, to work on maintenance, something like
Yes.
that. Do you want to restate the motion?
I'll have our legal counsel restate it because he stated it very well.
You forget.
And, well, no, I didn't. I actually pulled up Word to help me write it. I would ask the motion maker if the intent is for a report back on how it could be incorporated into the CIP, or just that it be incorporated into the CIP. I guess that would be my first question. and then I
That
can help you with the rest.
improvements to the park be incorporated into the CIP, maintenance improvements.
Would we, as the second, would we want to add, do we want to add, without reference to the,
So you do have that second motion that you will bring in a few minutes.
no, I wasn't getting to the park, to the Arts Festival, I was getting to some language that said a maintenance program independent of the master plan.
So what I have right now, what I drafted up for you was just move to request that the Department of Public Works incorporate infrastructure maintenance at Prescott Park into the CIP. Does that cover what you're looking for? I'm looking at you, Peter.
Sure.
Does that cover what you guys are looking for? And Jefferson, did you get that?
Oh, we're getting there.
Not forgetting about you.
All right, I had to wait that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can I just clarify, this will not slow down their process at DPW?
This will be an additional amount of monies that we spend as a part of the CIP that would come back to us as a council at future years. Park improvements that are not currently contemplated in the master plan.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Butler.
Do we know any sort of dollar amount associated with this?
We do not.
No.
We need time to figure that out.
Yeah, this is not, this is imagining the work that would happen if we did not go through past phase 1A. That's, you know, lighting, sidewalks, et cetera, what that would look like. But we are not committing to, just for the public, this would go into the capital improvement plan for some future year. It would sit there, and until that is adopted on July or June of that year, for the next fiscal budget is not going to be funds that we expend.
Correct. We would not start planning this part until the fall, and it would be part of fiscal year 28. Correct.
At the earliest.
At the earliest.
Yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Peter Rice.
All right.
Councilor Cook?
Your Honor, I move to suspend the rules and bring up item 15A.
Second?
Would you like to read the motion?
Um,
Oh, yeah, oh, sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Your Honor, I move for the city to collaborate with Prescott Park Arts Festival to plan for and initiate improvements to the park infrastructure, slight modification here, including a stage and ancillary structures funded by the festival to support the long-term needs of the organization.
I'll second and then propose one language amendment, which would be to say a covered stage. If that's a friendly amendment you'd accept.
Yes.
Councilor Bagley.
I'm going to be supportive of this, and I'm going to give a quick history lesson from my perspective. Shrek, which is playing this summer, first played in 2014, which is a long time ago now, which scares me because it feels like yesterday. But that's when my wife and I decided to rent in Portsmouth. So our daughter could go to Little Harbor. She's graduated from high school now, but at the time she was little, and it was at Shrek where we, or at least I personally, made the decision that Portsmouth was where we were going to make our home. Because if we lived walking distance to Prescott Park, we'd be walking through and something like Shrek would be happening, which is what happened that night. And we just got to enjoy it, and it was fantastic. And when I first ran for council, however long ago that was, there was a question about a stage at Prescott Park, and I voted yes and for the covered stage at the time, or that's what I told the newspaper. And then events happened, and that was no longer a pressing issue for a number of years. I do believe that we've had a huge amount of community discussion about this stage and the idea of a stage. At some point, I think it makes sense to leave the discussion behind and make a decision. My daughter's gone from second grade to graduated high school, and we haven't moved forward with the stage, but I do feel that the community has coalesced around the idea of a stage there. So I would be supportive of this motion, and I would be supportive of an accelerated timeline, especially in light of the fact that it seems like we could fund most, if not all of this, with private donations, which that capacity may not be there 5 years from now.
Councilor Morrow.
I'm happy to support the motion as long as we have discussed, that there would be a public process around the options that would come forward so that we can make sure we get the input moving forward with that. But excited to allow some private funding to be able to help move that forward. I think whether it's covered or uncovered or whatever, I say we have to hear from the public as to their wants on that.
Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. The reason that I collaborated with Councilor Tabor in bringing this motion forward is that for years I've watched Prescott Park Arts Festival struggle every summer with rainouts, with challenges around a stage that deteriorates on a regular basis. It has to be resheathed every few years. I know that there is a struggle about weight and support on that stage, how much the stage will support as far as sets every year for their programming. And I have significant concerns around the safety of the stage, not just for the people who work on it every day in the summer and perform there in the summer, but I have concerns around safety because the stage is there, the structure's there in the park year-round. That means that kids can climb under it. What does that look like in the middle of winter? How safe is it to have kind of this temporary structure that really doesn't serve its purpose as well as we would like in the summer, but also kind of serves this, kind of questionable safety purpose through the rest of the year and is not usable. So it sits there through the rest of the year. For all practical purposes, we have had a permanent stage in the park and for many, many years. It's just not an incredibly safe stage. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that we need to have a better stage for a festival that's been around for 52 years. That's the majority of the term and the life of this park, actually. The festival has been around. But also, we also must acknowledge that this is the city's park, And so that anything that gets built in that park belongs to the city of Portsmouth. So this would be a gift to the city of Portsmouth. I think it was well said during public comment that if the Arts Festival raises funds to build this stage, the stage can be used not just for the Arts Festival, but it can be used for band concerts in the spring. It could be used for a wrap-up for the Halloween parade in the fall. It is a stage that would belong to the community in this park, and it was part of the 1964 vision for the park, a stage that was covered. I've seen the drawings. It's really important to remember that this is part of one of the really critical parts of this community for many members of the community. And the only way that they can accomplish this is by collaborating with the city and starting these conversations, because the city owns the park. And anything that the Arts Festival does in that park has to go through the city, and the applications to the Department of Environmental Services come from the city of Portsmouth. So we have to be collaborators in order for this to be achieved. So that's why I brought this motion tonight, because I think it's really critical for us to acknowledge our role in this, the importance of this festival to the community for the long term, and how important it's been for the last 52 years in the park. But it's also important to acknowledge that our park deserves a nicer stage, and our community deserves a nicer stage.
Thank you, Councilor Cook. Councilor Blaylock?
Thank you, Your Honor. I always say I don't melt, and there's no bad weather, there's just bad clothing. But if you have $1,000 instruments, electronics, and everything, that changes all of that. So I think a covered stage would benefit us all. I think it would just make Prescott Park that much more of a gem. We wouldn't have shows canceled, you wouldn't have plays canceled. I know I'd be down there in a poncho, but I'd be supportive of this.
Councilor Tabor?
I brought along, I don't know if Kevin can zoom in, this is the 1964 Prescott Park Master Plan illustration, and in the box is a stage, a band shell that was foreseen as, there we go.
Hold it straight forward.
He
was trying to zoom in and you kept moving.
Upside down and backwards. So that was the original concept for the park. This is the proposed stage from 2016, which has a fabric top, takes a small footprint, and that the City Council in 2016 voted for that to go through the permitting process. But as the mayor pointed out, those were fractious times, and what ended up happening was forming a committee and creating a master plan. I've talked about the necessity for the stage, and I think everybody's covered that. The danger of slip and fall, electrical hazards, and the rainouts, and the opportunity if we had a good stage. But this whole stage for years, for 9 years, has been part of a three-legged race with the park master plan. And that plan was very ambitious. It had 6 phases. That's been whittled down to 1, and now to part of 1. So I'm encouraged by our discussion tonight, because I'm hearing that if we dropped the current stage location back 80 feet, parallel with the stone wall of the brick wall of the formal gardens, that may be a location for a beautiful covered stage, and would meet all of the needs that we've talked about tonight. So I think we should endorse this motion, endorse a new stage in the park, and direct our city staff, as the policy of this council, to work with the Arts Festival to come up with the location and ultimately the design and placement and infrastructure, because remember, it is deeded back to the city after it's privately funded. So it has to be a partnership. It has to be a collaboration. And I would no doubt imagine there'll be some types of letters of agreement. But it's been 9 years, And that's 9 years that the key donors have waited in the wings, ready to fund this. So now's the time.
Councilor Tabor?
Sorry. Mayor, thank you, Mayor. I think what's great about what happened tonight is we're doing two things. There's an impetus for the DPW to move forward with what is a really critical change. You know, we have to protect these buildings in the park. We are one more king tide away from who knows what, and I feel like Puddle Dock is taking itself back down there. But also that, I love how Councilor Cook said, this is a gift to the city, this stage. And to me, it's like nothing is more part of the fabric of Portsmouth than the Prescott Park Arts Festival. So I think I totally support this motion.
Councilor Flynn, I'll support the motion for two reasons. The first of which, I think that it's important to see what's possible in this. I think that it's important to understand that we are, what we are asking for as a community is realized on the paper, and two, because it's separate from the capital improvement plan, which will require, and it will require a public comment or a public hearing as part of the master plan. I want to just double check and correct that. That's my understanding of this motion, Attorney McCourt. Is that your understanding of collaboration is not entailing that this is going to happen for certainty, but we'll work towards bringing this back?
Yes, Your Honor, absolutely. Certainly, any agreement would have to come back.
So I think that it's good to see what's possible, and I stress this from a standpoint of I'm not going to embarrass Courtney again, but we are at a position in the parks, the Prescott Park Arts Festivals, where I think that we're able to have this conversation because of how well things have gone. I think that the fear that I have with any changes to the park, and it's not that I'm now 42 and fear all change, it's that I love the park the way it is. I love being able to walk in and feel as though I'm a part of a community. I love seeing folks that I know, and I love that it doesn't look so, professionally polished. Don't love the trailers, but I love the things that make the park our own, and to feel that sense of ownership. And so I'd ask when, there's the collaboration around that, to remember, I think, that the special parts of the park are those things that make it feel like it's a part of the park, that it is a park first. And if we can thread the needle of making it park first, then I could consider a more permanent or a permanent stage there. It's not going to happen because there's, I think, a lot of people that love the idea of a permanent stage, but don't love the idea of us becoming something that we're not there. But it's clear in the rainouts, it's clear in the stage getting spongy, it's clear when there's, the collaboration, the music hall and moving them over there. I mean, it's that there needs to be somewhat of a difference approach here, and I'm ready to look at that difference and see what that could mean, especially, and it was noted as a gift, but that it could be in terms of a public-private or just a private aspect there does not go kind of unheard, and that's a big step in the direction of this. And some of the conversations that were harder to support was just last year with the fact that it would have been much more public funds to go in there. So we'll be supportive of this, and thank you for everybody that came out. Sure. Suspend the rules. Wait, a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Second.
We got to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
So just a point of reference, the master plan that Ms. Councilor Tabor held up was not the original plan for the park. That was in 1964. The park was established in 1937. I have never been able to determine why that master plan was not adopted. I suspect part of it is because it included a maritime village that was against what the Prescott sisters wanted. They had wanted, there was competing visions for that park at that point, 1930s. One was to sort of do a recreation of a maritime village, and one was just to keep it fallow. And the Prescott sisters were against the maritime village. I don't know why that master plan wasn't adopted. In terms of the motion, the wording of the motion is different from what was on the city council agenda, so therefore there really wasn't proper notice to the public as to the wording of the motion. And also, it's a little hard for us, for me, sitting here to know exactly what the council agreed to tonight. So if this can be sort of a bit of a dialogue, it seems that the sidewalks, lighting, improvements like that, the maintenance of the park will actually go into the CIP. The council has approved DPW Rice's plans for what they're doing now in Phase 1A, and that will be unaffected. And I just would look for some clarification as to actually what has been decided here tonight. Thank you.
Sure. So do you want to go through? Do you want to speak, Rick?
Unless you have something you want to say.
Oh, so we voted. We didn't vote to change any of the plans. That was already in the CIP for 1A. What we saw was an updated, I guess, schematics on the plans as they came to the water lines, and being able to give a tacit, we did not vote on approving those plans or not tonight, but it seemed like there was agreement they were generally considered positive and in line with what we had for the capital improvement plan. So nothing is changed from that. The second thing that we voted on this evening was for us to include in the CIP infrastructure improvements for the park, infrastructure and maintenance, so things that would occur that have not occurred as we're waiting to redo, reflecting the fact that the multiple later phases, boardwalk, waterscape things are not going to happen in terms of the master plan, and to be removed from the CIP as they were, to put in their place maintenance improvements in their place. The last thing that we just voted on was to allow the city and the Prescott Park Arts Festival to work together to come up with locations for a covered stage inclusive. You are correct. I probably should have made us think about it, but that was not noticed. I think that was the intent of the message. It was not it did not say permanent stage. It said a covered stage. And so to be able to get from that, and we clarified with attorney that anything would be brought back as a part of a revision to the master plan with a public process therein.
Your Honor, we haven't voted on that part.
We haven't voted on that, okay.
But just with all due respect, the motion was to plan for and initiate improvements to the park infrastructure.
Parliamentary inquiry. Would the addition of the words permanent stage substantially change the motion?
Covered, no, that's not the motion.
Yes.
No, that's not.
But I think.
And is that allowed?
That's not the motion.
Well, anything is allowed under a motion, I think.
Yeah, you can just redo you could redo, I mean.
I can read the motion again. That was not the motion. The motion was move for the city to collaborate with Prescott Park Arts Festival to plan for and initiate improvements to the park infrastructure, including a covered stage and ancillary structures funded by the festival to support the long-term needs of the organization. It was a clarification phrase that was added based upon questions I asked to DPW Director Rice. He said that it would be better if we were more clear. So I added the clarity. That's all.
Didn't Councilor Tabor make an amendment?
Councilor added covered.
Yeah, it covered. Yeah, I understand your motion a little bit better now. I didn't quite catch it the first time you said it. And just to clarify, I think what was in my head here, and I didn't fully articulate when the mayor asked the question, I would anticipate that before anything could actually happen, there would be, at least a lease amendment would have to come back to the city council, certainly.
Yeah.
and that would be the kind of the mechanism by which you would actually approve. And, you know, when you say in the motion, you know, initiate, that would be the mechanism by which it would be initiated.
Yeah, that was definitely the intent, because the council can't accept anything. Council would have to accept it as a gift to the city as well, and go through the process of requesting permission from DES. And so there's a whole process, I know, that has to happen, but we're talking about initiating a process so that we can even get to a stage where we can approve something.
Rick?
Thank you, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. This is why it's so important to keep our minutes, not recover it. We need to have this conversation in writing, at least to be able to have the public understand which each council's concerns were from the public's perspective and the council's. We need to have detailed minutes at all times. Regardless, I was a part of the master plan when it came to that. I worked with Beth, I worked with the committee. I think I was elected just shortly after my first term. The one thing was, and none of you know, and you don't, is we have to get permission from the Attorney General's office in order to be able to build a permanent. The word permanent was never allowed. Commercial was never allowed in the park. This is part of it. The Attorney General's office, we have to, as a city, convince them to be able to move forward with what we want. Courtney has done an unbelievable job. Unbelievable. Surpasses anyone else other than my beloved George Hosker. I worked with George, I love George, but Courtney has done an unbelievable job. But there are parameters that are here. We have to be respectful. Please do not disregard this master plan. We spent millions. To disregard it is throwing it away, people's time, whether they still live here or not. I get it. But to completely disregard millions, and I'm sure staff could tell you the millions of dollars before you really go down a separate path. Infrastructure, absolutely. Electrical, have we not learned anything? We had a tragic accident that only involved an animal. That was electricity through a defected wire that was not up to code, that was not in conduit. And I mean, I don't want to say fortunately it was an animal and not a human being, but do you know the millions of people that go through our city and through that park? And it is millions if you went and go a complete duration. That's a big ask. The sidewalks, most definitely. But I thought, following the process, that that seawall was the #1 issue. Over our lights, over, it doesn't do any good. And I remember Peter Rice going and saying time and time, why am I going to fix my lights and my infrastructure underneath if we still have water coming in? And that's substantial, and that's why we have to get the state involved, and we have to have the right permits, which he has been working on diligently. Let's try not to get ahead of ourselves. But the one thing was not a permanent stage. It was a temporary covered. And I know that there were people that weren't happy about that, but that was basically the consensus. That was kind of the agreement. And there were discussions, long discussions, about how concerts and bands, they travel, these celebrities, and they have these huge stages that go up. Anything permanent is going to be susceptible to the weather that we have there, whether it be mist, whether it be snow, whether it be rain. You are not going to stop. I have around the corner, just up on Court Street, 2nd Street, from actually the Margin's house, every year I have to scrape, prime, paint mahogany sills, mahogany woodwork, mahogany sills on doors. They're not as close to what that is. Metal is going to rust. You want an expert to go and tell you? Ask the people that go and maintain our bridges here in the Seacoast area. It's a huge challenge. So the discussion was concrete, but even concrete wears on things after a while. But it was never about that big permanent stage. It wasn't. And a permanent stage with a roof on it is not going to keep people sitting on the grass. I know that Councilor Blaylock said he'd wear a poncho, but you know, when those concerts cancel, yes, the stage is wet, but at the same time, there's huge knowledge in all of this. Mayor, if you are going to put a committee, I have not asked you for just about anything, but if you put a committee together, I would like to personally volunteer to be able to work with that committee, to be able to see that the community gets what it wants without disregarding the past. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Rick. Any other comments? Oh, Petra.
So I'm looking at the presentation that was nicely done back there, and I look at the front page. This is very upsetting. This could actually, for those of us who love Portsmouth and love the park, this could almost make me cry. So the first thing that I want to say is I was also on the committee with Beth. This argument went through the same thing 5-6 years ago, and what it came down to is fixing the park and protecting the park first. So if what Rick said is true about going to Concord to get permission for this, I urge you to again review the Prescott sisters' wishes and honor them. And I do not understand how you could put the permanent stage in your motion when the public has not seen it. There is a process for this that is substantially changing what you have here. So please think about that and honor the processes, because it seems like you're having a real hard time with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. We'll give everybody one bite at the apple first, and then.
Hi, everyone. Courtney Perkins, Executive Director of Prescott Park, resident of Barrington, 227 Stepping Stones Road. I want to thank everybody for their compliments tonight about the Arts Festival. Myself, the staff, and the current board take that very seriously, as well as our relationship with the city. We've talked a lot about the expediency of changes that need to happen and about protecting the park. There is a constant running conversation around permanent and or temporary. So what I would offer is that there is a stage that sits in the park in a permanent space year round. And if we are talking about making changes and putting the park first and protecting the park, the stage sits in the park year round. So the festival is asking for a formal mechanism to work in partnership with the city to pay for and plan something that makes sense. We're not asking for any kind of referendum tonight on permanent or temporary. We need a mechanism to make changes to the park, and I would offer that fixes to the stage are even more expedient than fixes to the building. It is a rough stage that gets recovered at the festival's expense every other year. And so what we're asking for is a formal mechanism that the council approves, that we can work with the city to come up with plans to present to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, you guys have had a long night already. So Beth Margison again,
It's at
24
the
Market
beginning.
Street.
We're at the beginning.
I have one tomorrow night, so I am at the ZBA tomorrow night. But I do want to say that the PPAF under the leadership of Courtney Perkins has been much better, frankly. The neighborhood was not always treated so kindly under the last director, so I do want to give her props for that. I still think it's a little bit too loud, but it is a very, very different festival. And I welcome the civic dialogue. I was a little bit, I don't know, I was not treated so well during the last go-around. I was expecting somebody to say that I had PPAF deranged syndrome or something, but these are, you know, serious conversations and a good push-pull between two different competing visions. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you for those words of praise for the director. And I think that is at the heart of what will come out, or a solution will come out of remembering that we all love this one thing in Portsmouth. We have a different memory of what that is. For us, for me, as long as we don't touch the whale sculpture, I'm good, you know, but I think that there's a difference for everyone. I look forward to, if this were to pass, one, I would say to former Mayor Beckstead, he's correct in terms of needing approvals and seeking approvals. Those will be certainly a part of anything that we do. It's worth stating, though, lease agreements would have to be adjusted in terms of how this would actually go in terms of, and it's a good reminder that this is a permanent, it sits there permanently. It can be taken away. So is that the best? Is that the best for noise reduction? I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that can come out of this that we could be incredibly happy with collectively, and I think that we're able to have this conversation because we're not at a point where it's an ideological ask, it's a practical ask of there are needs of the park and there are needs of the community, and how do we come together and deal with them practically? That's the expectation, and I'm looking forward to this process, which could devolve, but for right now, I think it started off, and a credit to anybody that has different, opinions. Our goal is to have a community dialogue on this that respects everyone in this and not paint them one way or the other as being against the future of the park, because you can't be passionate about this and come to a council meeting and wait till 9:30 to talk if you are not passionate about the future of the park. And so I think that passion, if we can recognize it in one another, will deliver something that is truly positive for what we all love, and that's this park. So with that, I will ask, I don't think we need a roll call, but all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I'm going to take a 5-minute recess because we've been going since 5. Welcome back. We are all the way to public hearings. That's, for folks at home, that's the second page. We have first reading of ordinance amending Chapter 7, Parking, Article 1, Parking Meters, Section 7.102, Parking Meter Rates to establish parking rates for the Resident Access Parking Program pilot.
Your Honor, I move to pass first reading and schedule public hearing and second reading at the May 4th, 2026 City Council meeting.
Second.
Councilor Moreau.
I'd just like to ask staff if they could look into the possibility of some community partners that may have volunteers that we may need to look in as to whether or not we can add them either to the workforce parking or if they can be whitelisted like other staff from the library, or how we're doing that. I just think if they have, written letters from the community partners that they're truly in town volunteering, that maybe we want to add them to that portion for the Parrot Ave side, or that's really the closest to most of the downtown. But I just would like staff to look into it and see if that's feasible and possible.
Yep, and I would ask, in terms of, I know that we got, with some comments, I guess like just to reframe this a little bit, there's an opportunity to extend the Foundry and the work that's happening there, and I'm really excited that this is something that's happening here. Whenever we make a change, it's difficult, but I think there was some comments that somebody sent my way in terms of like Little League. Again, I would love to be able to see like how this could be, as much as a resident, it's important to residents, a community parking program, recognizing that there's some people that either moved out of Portsmouth, they're still part of the community, to be a part of that, and just to see what those impacts would be on there in terms of like SAU 50, to be a part of that would be helpful in terms of the beginning of this program. When again, it's really trying to give relief to residents, to provide more dedicated parking for hourly workers, but to be able to continue to have a community feel is something that would love to be able to see. Councilor Blaylock?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've also received some feedback from the Little League community about their concerns, specifically on Parrot Ave. I know, and it really would only pertain to all their games. That one's tough because it's volunteers, and obviously the kids are only 6, 7, and 8. But they do, they're there most of the day, Saturdays, and pretty much every weeknight.
So that could be included in SAU 50, or if they were a member of that organization. But I think being able to create a pathway for people to get that whitelist aspect of it would be something that would love to be able to see as a part of secondary. Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but the Rock Street parking lot is remaining free. Is that correct? And so,
That's correct.
And so is the Parrot
Rock
Avenue.
Street parking spots.
Do you mean Rockland Street?
Rockland Street, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Rockland Street. And the Parrot Avenue lot will remain free as well. So there are alternative parking spots for these individuals as well.
Yeah, I mean, Rockland is on the other, so that's on Leary, so it is on the other side of that. But again, yep, Councilor Bagley?
I think I'm not going to be here May 4th, so I just wanted to say this has gone through a lot of revisions. I was on PTS when we did the first pilot. I'm generally very happy with it. I don't want to, at some point we have to draw a line somewhere about who gets the free parking, who doesn't. I'll let you guys figure that out on May 4th. But I would say,
we'll keep third reading till when you get back.
we don't get even the option to pay for parking in places like Rye. So, Portsmouth residents, they pay a lot of taxes to support all those facilities. If somebody that doesn't live in Portsmouth now has to park a street over and leave the premium parking for the Portsmouth residents because they don't want to pay $1, I'm not opposed to that.
Understood. So the motion, is it a motion, Councilor Moreau?
I did not formally make a motion. I was asking for staff to look into the feasibility of this and to just report back at second reading.
We hear you.
That's all.
Okay. So it doesn't require a motion? Looking into stuff. All right,
Just trying out what's
all
the
right.
feasibility and how it would affect the program, so.
Okay, and if we were to adopt it at second reading, or changes at second reading, what would that entail? If we were to expand the, either whitelist or, if we were to expand the whitelist or extend who could benefit from the worker or hourly worker program, would that be an amendment that could be delivered at second reading, or would that have to be renoticed second reading? Just curious.
Sorry, I'm struggling to understand what the.
So when we make an,
if it's, because I
if
need
it's
to
a
make.
material change by expending it, or is it a non-material change that we could take public feedback, which would be my guess, but I don't know if that would be a material change that we'd have to then renotice and hold second reading again.
I mean, it would depend on the scope, certainly, but as you're describing it, it wouldn't seem to me to be a material change as you're describing it, but it would depend on what the final motion would come back as, because, I mean, obviously it's going to be dependent on a report back from staff and, your feedback from the public.
Is it possible to have that report back as a part of the packet for second reading, in advance of second reading? Don't want to put too much pressure on that, but could that?
I'm looking at two of the staff people who would be part of the answer to
Probably
that
a
is
big
yes.
thumbs up.
We got a
All right.
thumbs up.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll have that as the discussion, and we'll get to, without Andrew, although he's made his comments perfectly fine, or felt, but we'll have that report back, so when the public is here, they will have it in advance of the public hearing, and be able to vote on second reading, if this passes first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, public hearing regarding resolution authorizing $6 million to participate in the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for Fleet Street Area Reconstruction Phase 2B.
Water Resource Manager Al Pratt has a very brief presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councilors. So the city was awarded a loan through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for the Fleet Street Area Reconstruction Project, and this project involves the replacement of water lines, sewer, and stormwater along Fleet Street in that area, like you're seeing now around Congress. This actual Fleet Street project for 2026 was ranked third out of 41 projects competing for this loan through the state revolving loan process. The loan is for $6 million. With that's 5% principal forgiveness, so essentially $300,000 off of that loan. 20-year term, 4.125% interest on that. Another benefit of the state revolving fund program is we don't start payments until a year after substantial completion. So that pushes out the payments on these until 2028, 2029 period, which helps the management of our sewer enterprise fund. Overall project cost for this is about $18 million. We already have $12 million from previous SRFs, so this will round out what we need to complete this project. Also, in FY27, CIP has the $6 million identified already, so tonight is a vote basically to front run that and approve that tonight instead of later on through the resolution. And the deadline for this is next Thursday, so that's why we're here tonight.
Excellent. Thank you, Al. Any questions for Mr. Pratt? Mr. Bagley?
No questions, just, thank you for doing this. This saves us money. The Fleet Street project, while painful, is woefully overdue, and we're protecting our most important resource, water. So, this is a pretty easy vote for me.
Any other questions before we open up the public hearing? Seeing none, Al, thank you. And we now open the public hearing. Speakers 2 for or against. Authorizing $6 million to participate in the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for Fleet Street. Seeing none, closing the public comment. Any additional council questions or deliberations? This will require a roll call vote, and 2/3 of us have to say yes.
Your Honor, I move to adopt the resolution as presented.
I second that.
Jefferson, will you please take the roll?
Yes. Councilor Cook?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Flynn?
Yes.
Counselor Hopkins?
Yes.
And Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
All right, with an 8-0 vote, the ayes have it, the motion passes.
Thank you, Jefferson. Next up, public hearing regarding a resolution authorizing $6.5 million to participate in the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for Greenland Well PFAS treatment.
Okay, similarly, this is from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, $6.5 million. This award is a little more confusing since this award includes funds from the Emerging Contaminant Fund, since it's PFAS related. So $861,791 is coming from this Emerging Contaminant Fund with 100% forgiveness right off the top. And then of the remaining funds in that loan, there's 10% forgiveness off that. So for the overall $6.5 million loan, we'll have approximately $1.4 million taken off of the loan. And we had some bonds associated with this. So part of this resolution is to rescind a bond from FY26 for $2 million. So we're taking some of that off and replacing it with this loan process here. Also, FY27 CIP also included $1.5 million for this project, and that will in turn be excluded from the resolution for the FY27 bonds.
Say that last part again, just real quickly. There was $1.5 million in our CIP.
In the FY27 CIP, just as a placeholder. So when it comes time to go through the resolution process, that will not be included. So ultimately, we'll be taking $3.5 million off the books for bonds and replacing it with this.
Okay, thank you. Any other council questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public comment or the public hearing to speak to, for, or against the authorization of $6.5 million to participate in the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for Greenland Well PFAS treatment. Seeing no one rise, no one on Zoom, closing the public hearing. Any additional council questions or deliberations?
Your Honor, I move to adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
Jefferson, we will please call the roll.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Flynn?
Yes.
Counselor Hopkins?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
On a 8-0 vote, the ayes have it. The motion passes.
Jefferson. Next up, we have the city manager's items which require action.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have one item for you this evening, and it's a request for both temporary and permanent easements from the city to the town of Madbury to assist in the replacement of the Frechette Road Bridge over Johnson Creek. This will take place in a single construction year, and the information is in your packet from the town. They've been a pleasure to work with, and for the de minimis impact, the town is looking to pay us $500, and both Public Works and Legal have approved of the form.
Councilor Bagley?
Just a question, why is it $500 and not like, say, $1? Is there a legal reason for that?
Well, so that de minimis payment tracks with what the New Hampshire Department of Transportation has established as their quote-unquote de minimis payment, where you have these really small easements, and it doesn't make sense financially to go get an appraisal. They've just set as their minimum amount that they would give in compensation is $500. So that was what the town's offer tracked with.
Okay. I didn't want to be charging Madbury anything we didn't need to because they provide our water.
Very nice.
We do pay taxes, you know.
I move to authorize the city manager to execute the permanent and temporary easements to the town of Madbury for the culvert replacement on Frechette Road and accept their de minimis payment of $500 as presented.
Second.
Councilor Cook?
I just wanted to thank the town of Madbury for making these needed improvements. It not only impacts their residents, but it impacts our access to our water resources. So thank you very much.
Agreed. Get him a nice fruit basket with that. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That brings it to the consent agenda. A3.
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Counselor Cook.
Before we accept the consent agenda, I wanted to note that this is the first time we're seeing city encumbrances, a city encumbrance report because of the change in ordinance that we made last year, and so I appreciate getting this report to the council.
Oh, yeah. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We've had presentations, written communications, email correspondence.
Move to accept and place on file.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We've had that small report on Prescott Park. So we're on to appointments to be voted. There is a lot, and we've forgotten one, so I'm going to start with Eric Weinraub to, and the spelling of that is
Weinrieb.
IEB, not AB. Okay.
Thank you, City Manager.
Appointment to the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee. And so I'm going to read through all of these, and instead of have them all voted separately, I would simply ask to be voted at the end. So in addition to Eric, the appointment of Elisa Margolin to the Board of Commissioners, Portsmouth Housing Authority, appointment of Paula Glynn to the Citywide Neighborhood Committee, the appointment of Colleen Oveka to the Citywide Neighborhood Committee, the appointment of Jessica Blasco to the Conservation Committee, the reappointment of Mary Lone to the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee, along with Jennifer Stebbin Thomas, Hagan Megerditch, Andrew Simonis, Byron Maddow, Eric Anderson, Angus McDonald, Oliver Chagg, and Caitlin McGrath Levesque to the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee, the reappointment of Rich Duddy, Lauren Kranz to the Recreation Board, and the appointment of Sean Dima to the Safe Water Advisory Group.
Your Honor, I move to.
Oh,
You can stop there.
Oh, yeah, I can stop there. Great.
Your Honor, I move to confirm your appointments as presented.
Second.
Counselor Cook.
Your Honor, I would ask that we remove Eric Anderson from this list and approve him separately. You were unable.
I suppose that's is there a further discussion on Eric that you would like to have?
I believe that the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee, the goal is to increase housing in the community, and I don't believe he's an advocate for increasing housing for residents, and so I would vote no on his appointment, and I didn't want to vote no on everyone else's appointment.
Okay. We can pull Eric Anderson from, so we'll take, if it's possible to take Eric first, Councilor Flynn?
Why would we do this? Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't sound well.
Would we vote separately outside, would the council vote on that appointment? Or are you saying take it off the?
Just take it out to be a separate motion.
Separate motion.
Instead of voting for all 12 at once.
Okay.
Divide the.
Oh, I see, okay.
Okay,
A
we'll
motion
divide the
to
question.
divide the question.
And take Eric up first, okay? Eric Anderson for consideration to the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee.
So moved.
Second.
I will, I'll speak in defense of Eric, somebody that I have known for quite a while, haven't always agreed with the positions that he's taken on multiple things, but somebody that I've known to do an incredible amount of homework. I think that we move as fast as we move together, and Eric has always raised significant questions, again, sometimes that I don't think are meaningful to the discussion, but are on other people's minds as we have that. I think we run the risk if we make a committee full of folks that are focused on one outcome, that we skip over questions that are worth discussing, and it might take us a little longer to get to the ultimate goal of building more housing, but I do believe, and I believe this strongly, that we will build more housing we build it together, and we get more people to ask the questions that sometime can be assumed that we all know the answer to. Councilor Boyle?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've also known Eric Anderson for a long time. Consider myself neighbors with him. He's been a very dedicated servant or volunteer to the city of Portsmouth. He used to serve as our representative to PEAS, Development Authority. But I think, you know, it takes a village, and I think Eric's part of our village, you know, and I consider him a good friend, and I think he does good work.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not questioning Eric Anderson's dedication to the city or his spirit of volunteerism. I think that he has been an incredible volunteer for the community. I think he has served his interests and the interests of several of his community members well. But I believe we're in a housing crisis right now, and I think that we need to move as quickly as possible on getting things done as far as building housing or making adjustments to our zoning to allow for more housing. And I don't believe that we have the time to sit back for several more years and wait to address concerns that have already been addressed. So that's why I'm voting against Eric Anderson's nomination.
Understood. Again, I think that we agree on one, that we have to build a lot of housing, and that we have to do it as quickly as possible. I think that there's sometimes a strong belief that, you know, what happens here is the end of the conversation, and it's really sometimes just the beginning of that conversation. I'd like to have as much information presented and people feel as though their voices are being heard in order to do exactly what we're trying to do, and appreciate that we disagree on this nomination. Councilor Tabor.
I just was add that as we worked together on the Housing Committee, Eric became very focused on housing for people below median income, that was really our focus. And when we ended our work, he felt like we had made some progress on that, and he was the first member of the committee to reapply.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
For the larger question, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next up, that was a whole page, guys, just if we're going along. We got through, are we going to get through 10:30? Who knows? We're going to amend the Board, Commission, Committee appointments of the City Council to include Assistant Mayor Kelly, Councilor Tabor, and Councilor Moreau on the Portsmouth Pool Housing Committee. That does not require a vote, and you guys don't get to say no. This is something I, in the risk of sounding it started from my daughter, and I promised her that I would actually do something about it. So she wrote me a letter about 3 months ago, and it was about, Dad, you understand that you have, and I know this is so nepotism, you know, talking about, but like, she had said that you have Student Government Day, and that's really cool, but you don't have Student Public Comment Day. And that's where you learn how to be a citizen. And so, like, now I say that all the time, and so that a part of it rubbed off. I was super excited, and so tried to think about how could we do this in a way that could be meaningful for our school population, and had a conversation with superintendent on doing this, and it was kind of pretty quick to understand if we just had it in City Hall where everybody came at 7 o'clock and there was maybe another thing, that would have been harder to do. So we settled on the idea that we would have it in the elementary schools, and that we all as counselors, 3 of us would go to each one, and we'd take along 3 members of the school board, and we'd listen to what the students in the 3rd to 5th grade might have to say about the future of their city. And if we just get out of it that you know, they feel as though they're being listened to, you know, that's a pretty great thing to happen. And we might figure out that there's things that we're overlooking that we shouldn't. And then, you know, ultimately, you know, I think we'll all be reminded of like what it is we're doing, regardless of, you know, if we have kids or not, kids in the schools or not, being able to think about the future of Portsmouth in a different way than we commonly thinking about it in terms of parks is an opportunity. So I left it pretty broad because I wanted to make sure that these, you know, it's the school department that would have to come up with a plan. We didn't want to come and kind of make it, you know, maybe it works better in one school than the other for being in an auditorium or in a classroom, but I hope that we could all figure out a time that it could work towards the end of the year and be able to go and meet the next generation of kids that are coming up through Portsmouth. So I would await a motion to request a report back from the Superintendent McLaughlin on enabling an elementary school Citizens Day.
So moved.
Second?
And I'll speak to that. Your Honor, I'm very excited about this. Very excited that it came from your daughter, also my goddaughter. But I'm all about planting the seed, teaching the kids, listening to them, having their voices heard here at City Hall. Sometimes I try to claim I represent, you know, the kids, but I can't listen to them all, and I can't speak for them all. But yeah, I think this is awesome. If I was a student at Dondero, like I used to be, you know, you would learn so much from this experience, and to learn at that age, you would just keep growing and growing, and by the time you got to high school, you would know how public comment worked, or you know, yeah, I'm very excited about this. I'm excited to work on it and listen to the kids.
Councilor Bullock. Councilor Hopkins.
Does this get you any closer to Dad of the Year award?
Absolutely not. No, I think it's, no, she had a whole, she like is a little upset that it's not like a student public, school public comment day or student public comment day. But I think that it's a, I think the thing that my dad always talked about being a citizen, and that rubbed off on me, and I realized that there's an opportunity that that I got because I was around my dad, and I'm sure there was somebody in each one of our lives that spoke and kind of led the example of being a citizen and being engaged in the community. And then I realized that there's probably a lot of kids out there that might not have that example, that their voice is important and they are in charge of the government. And that's not because their parents they just have different priorities at the time, and it could just be like, hey, we gotta pay rent. So thinking about getting into the classrooms and saying, here's an opportunity to be reminded that we work for you, I think could be an awesome opportunity. And if I get Dad of the Year out of it, then, you know, Father's Day is coming up. I did point out some Legos that I wanted for my birthday. So that's all true. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then last thing, man, I should have, all these things were seemingly under I had to do them. But the proposed NHMA legislative policy, so a uniform homestead exemption. So we had talked quite a bit and on our legislative subcommittee on just what we could kind of bring towards making any changes on their legislative priorities. And one of the there's a lot that it's difficult to kind of push them on any housing. We've talked about forming a different potential organization with other cities that are in the same boat around needing more housing and maybe more aligned there. But the NHMA has a broad swath of folks that are across that. So some of the housing things didn't really make sense to bring there. One thing that might is that they've had a homestead policy conversation on there to support a policy for a homestead exemption or homeowners exemption, where residents that live here full-time would have a reduction in the assessed value, much like we just passed for our senior disabled tax exemptions, to be able to provide that for all residents on a full-time basis. And the goal here is to send a policy and speak to it that we approve, or we request that they change that from a policy or a study committee to actively fighting for this. And in light of, I think, what are universal feelings across the state around you know, the property taxes as they exist on a local level, this would be one lever that we could have, and we'll love to see if the NHMA would move from a study committee to actively supporting this. And I hope that we can support this change so that they can possibly support it in Concord.
Your Honor, I move to approve the proposed NHMA legislative policy on homestead exemptions as presented.
Second.
Councilor Morell?
Because we already have a statutory homestead law
You
on
can
the
change it
books,
to homeowners. but
if you
it's-
could change it to homeowners, it would make it just really clear for my
Okay.
work life.
Yeah. I think that, I'll take that as a
That was the
friendly,
second.
or as if
I'll
the-
take that as a friendly minute, yeah.
Okay.
Just change
homeowners.
homestead to homeowners, and I'd make me very happy.
All right. I thought that. And it also makes more sense when you talk to people about it. They don't know they don't think they live on the prairie. You know?
Right. Well, I have
I
to
think it is
actually
side
explain the homestead exemption to lots of people, so
It's like
if you
I
put
live in
something
a
else called
house.
homestead in our books, it's just gonna get confusing.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Yeah, we had another small one under Counselor Cook and Counselor Tabor. All right. And Counselor Bagley.
Your Honor, I move to authorize the city manager to send a every door direct mail postcard to all households in Portsmouth showing community power pricing versus Eversource and how to opt out.
I'll second that, sorry. Second.
My graphic design skills are lacking to say the least, but there's a mock-up of what I would propose in the packet. It's, in my opinion, it's clear that it's an official and not spam. And it says, this is how you save money, this is what you go to do. And a couple residents mentioned to me that if they had gotten a postcard such as this in the mail, they'd put it with their bills, and next time they were at the computer, they'd look into it.
What was the rate again?
It's 14.66 cents per kilowatt hour.
No, sorry, the amount. Sorry,
It's just under $5,000 to send one to every household.
4,466.
But that's an estimate, so, and that's for the printing cost plus the every door direct mail cost.
I would be happy, I guess, appreciate the copy. I was impressed with the work and I think the shared view of the situation through our Energy Advisory Council. If we approve this, I would rather the copy come from them, since they are ultimately the board that we've created as a permanent committee. And so would love to be able to either send this to them with the comeback as a request. But I like, the colors, the fonts, the comparison, to be able to share that. And I think it would go well to speak to the transparency that we're trying to bring here and the opportunity to save. Councilor Bagley?
Just a comment on that. The Energy Committee did do a postcard to the people due to get triggered over to the refresh. I wasn't a very big fan of the verbiage because it was difficult to decipher for a layperson, I thought, because it was a lot of verbiage, and it didn't clearly illustrate the price differential in percentage terms. The second issue I had is this happened back in February, and it took, I think, 7 or 8 weeks for us to get the postcard out. They got stuck out at the printer due to lack of payment or something like that because we had to use Community Power's printer because they had the mailing list. I would hate to see this bounce around for several weeks before it goes out, because this is costing people money now and has been costing them money since February when the rate changed.
Do you want to spend more?
Councilor Tabor?
I appreciate Councilor Bagley's real drive to have transparency around the rates, and I think our Energy Committee's done our best to do that with what I described in January around the time of the rate change. But I don't think I can support this. It's $4,500 when we're still looking to offset the school care levy and protect our bond rating before the end of the year. It's halfway through the utilities rate period already, so the information will change in 60 days. And, as Representative Ned Reynolds said, these utilities need to recover their costs, and we don't know what's going to happen in the next rate period. It could flip. So do we want to set up an expectation that everybody's going to save $22 a month and then it changes around? And CPC&H rates are lower. you know, I would suggest as an alternative, we could just have a clear, simple message that right now, for the next 2 months, you can save $22 a month, and we can use the city newsletter. And I asked the staff what the delivery count of that is at 6,884 households. And it has no cost to us. And I think that'd be effective.
Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I applaud Councilor Bagley for his concern around our Portsmouth residents and making sure they have the best deal on electric rates. I think we heard that also from the Energy Advisory Committee, and their concerns are making sure that it's clear and there's transparency around rates. I am concerned about the time frame because I do know how long it takes to get a postcard out, and I know that rates will be set soon for the next rate change in end of July. So we will know fairly soon, probably by May, what our rates will be starting August 1st. I think it might be more effective to refer this to the Energy Advisory Committee, and so that they have something prepared for when the next rate set comes to send out, so that everybody can be aware as of August 1st, these are going to be your rates. And I think from what I heard today from the discussion, the Energy Advisory Committee would be amenable to taking that action. I'm concerned about the time frame on getting this out and then the rates changing as well.
Councilor Bailey?
I don't share that concern in light of the fact that Community Power is going to need an adder till at least 2030 with their current projections, and they lost unexpected $2 million in July. I'm not optimistic that they're going to be better than Eversource. They may be. Nobody knows. What I'm concerned most about is our low-income residents, where this is going to have a massive impact on their monthly bill. And more likely than not, those are the residents that aren't subscribed to the city newsletter or looking at council meetings or reading Seacoast online. I'm worried about the residents just barely getting by on their budgets, where $22 a month, or in some cases like mine, it's $50 a month in savings, is very meaningful. And I think we opted everyone into Community Power. We made a conscious decision as council, which I voted for, to put people in Community Power. And at the time, I think it made a lot of sense. They've had a lot of difficulties and struggles. They've gone through leadership changes. I've taken a deep dive in their financials. I don't have confidence that we're going to see lower rates from Community Power in the next couple of years.
Councilor Hopkins and Councilor Flynn?
So I do appreciate that fight for transparency, but with something that has a changing rate and, you know, it's a moving target, I don't know that a permanent mailer for the tune of, what, $4,500 would be the way that I would want it to be delivered. And I understand, you know, outreach is important. Not everyone is on the newsletter, all of that kind of stuff, but could it find a home on the city website somewhere, something that we could have more ease amending as things change, and it would still be accessible, and it wouldn't spend $4,500. Also, I think it's, you know, I'll pause for a little. Are we voting on this, on this mock-up or on this, content? Or just the fact that we're sending
similar.
a mailer?
Yeah, I'm not a graphic designer.
Yeah. I think you did a great job for not being a graphic designer. But I wonder too, because I hear almost two intents from you, Councilor Bagley. One of, you know, yes, we want to save $22 a month for low-income, hardworking residents is a big deal. And you also say that you're not confident in one of these. So I wonder in the motives of this, you know, if you're trying to showcase the failure of Community Power somehow, or it just...
That's correct.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, no need to beat around the bush on that. I 100% am trying to accomplish both of those goals.
Yes. I only agree with one of them.
That's fair.
I only agree with, yes, we need more transparency so that our residents know how they can be more cost savvy with energy savings. I also think in this budget year, I don't think that an EDDM direct mailer would be frugal use of our funds. I think there could be a digital place or another place where it could live to be more easily accessed and edited as things change.
Councillor Flynn and then Councillor Morrow.
I don't really have anything to add to that, but I think that this could confuse people, confuse matters. We have a lot of social channels we can leverage, maybe the newspaper, the newsletter. I think I know this isn't just a prototype of it, but it feels like it might confuse the issue a bit, so I would not be in support of it.
Councillor Morrow.
I would not be in support of spending the money, but I would be in support of asking our fabulous Monty Bohannon, who is really good at communications, as to what would be the best way to communicate, whether it's the website or it's through the newsletter, or what would be the best communication to get to the population you're trying to get to. I'm not above giving them the information. I'm just not willing to spend the money.
I think that it's difficult just on the 2 months. I think that I thought some of the most effective critique, I think it was Kevin Charette who had stated that you guys were fantastic about noting all the times that you were lower, and you didn't note all the times that you were not, or that you were higher. I think that was probably the most effective, well, some of the most. Councillor Bagley, you had a lot of great points, but that one spoke to me because the benefit to community power, as I see it, one, it was in a time when the utility was locked into 6-month windows of needing to be able to buy, and they just were not responsive enough to spot pricing. Now there's difficulties with spot pricing that are externalities of how much, like, can they spot price and then make up their money on the next rate, or do they have to have reserves to pay for it? Interesting question that's being decided right now in the State House. So it may still kind of come back and be like, this is an effective, purchasing power that allowed us to do, what a lot of communities should strive to do, and that's have more buying power and energy independence by, locking in our rates. Do I think that some of the green, initiatives were oversold? Certainly, by just the fact that only 2% of Portsmouth, signed up for it. I think, like, in large part, they wanted cheaper, more predictable energy when we had, higher exogenic shocks that were causing some real price pressure on there. I think I do have some disagreements with the copy that you have and I wasn't really going to bring all those up, but I think it would be more effective if we tried to, through our Energy Advisory Committee, create a pathway for people to understand and trust, because I don't think we're going to be able to, if community power is going to exist, and even if we opt everybody into Eversource and they get a different, PUC ruling, different administration comes in and says, hey, we're gonna do it differently, and they're not going to be able to recoup costs. All of a sudden, their supply costs are going to go up higher. Are we going to come back and kind of turn, and change tone? Maybe, but I would like to strike a balance that says, hey, these are the facts, and these are places where you can find out, and we're committed to providing that information as quickly. I could certainly support at the next rate change a EDDM, and I could almost support it right now. It just seems like it's going to change in 60 days, and so that's going to be confusing. And I would rather try to ask the Energy Advisory Council, what do we think is the most effective way so that our Portsmouth residents are consistently made aware of the most favorable rates that they have on there, and to create a campaign that reaches those people that might not be on the city newsletter, as you correctly point out, that might not be, on, wasting their time on social media, that they might, how do we get to those folks, and how do we follow up and create a structure that allows them to do it? So I would be more supportive if this was in 2 months, where it could possibly set up a new framework for the city where you're constantly shopping for rates, and we're giving you resources to be able to do so. Councilor Bagley?
Reading the room, I see where the vote's going to go. I would propose, to the budget question, we're looking at roughly $220,000 that we would be saving our residents if they all opted out of community power for a $5,000 cost. That's a pretty good ROI for residents that are
Is that
concerned.
annual?
No, for 6 months. And what I would propose in 2 months is that we could do this every 6 months and let, unless there's no differential or the differential is insignificant. But if there's a large differential towards community power, away from community power, we could do a postcard like this at every rate change. Because the return on investment would save our residents a lot of money. I will also note that in the month of March, we had 372 residents opt out of community power. No other community had even 100. And Nashua, which has 28,137 users, which is close to 3 times ours, they had 37 people opt out. So the message is getting out in Portsmouth like it's not getting out in other communities. So I think we have been a leader there.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job, Andrew, on that. And I think that if there's an opportunity, one, I think a 6 month, if we're going to build in a cost, I'm sure the Herald's going to be, who sells the EDDM? Is it the Herald or is Seacoast Online?
Yes.
They're going to love it. They're going to cover the story every day. I would love to be able to see like what the, just as we see now, what the opt-in rates are. If it comes out and we change the opt-in rates by 32 because people are now conditioned to know and shop for rates and see that opportunity. I don't think we need to do it every 6 months, but I think committing to a 6 month period or a 6 month refresh here to give everybody the opportunity, what started with the whatever we called the refresh and now is going and comparing rates against everyone, I think would be a good opportunity, as long as it's also trying to showcase that we are trying to deliver the most advantageous rates that we have for our residents and where you can find them on a consistent monthly basis. Councillor Hopkins?
I think, what you're describing there is more of a proactive or a visionary or a forward-thinking plan versus what this feels like is more of just a reactionary kind of, not stab in the dark, but like, here, let's just tell them in any way we can. I would support transparency, and I would support helping our residents find as cost savings anywhere possible. But I think it should go through our Energy Advisory Committee. It should go through our Communications Department, and so that we can do it in a meaningful, sustainable way versus just tossing a mailer out to make sure that everyone can see that, community power is not the place to be. So again, kind of to the mayor's point, if this were in a couple months and it had a thought out plan, behind it, I would be for it. But as it is right now, I'm not in support.
I think that, and I appreciate the agreement there. I'm just going to tie it back to how we both agree with Andrew or Councillor Bagley on this, and that I think that's what we had hoped to see out of this, and I think that we were somewhat, it moved faster than we were able to move on this, and I think that we're able to see that now. This is something, maybe not exactly that, but like a transparent way of saying, hey, there's a difference in price that's going to affect this amount of money that you're going to see, is where our Energy Advisory Council should be to, because price is a big part of energy. If it wasn't, as Mr. Reese said, we'd love to be able to choose and there'd be no difference in price, maybe one day, but that's not the day. And, a credit to Councillor Bagley for following up on this, and doggedly, and being able to get us to a point where we're having this conversation. Because I don't think we would have had this conversation about a letter going out to everybody if not for the opportunity to have it right now. So if it's in 2 months where we prepare everybody for the updated rate change and commit to doing advocacy on that, I think that's a leadership position that will allow us to get the information to people to make their choices and still preserve what could be and continues to be a maybe on the purchasing power of a city, which can finance, better competitive markets and rates long-term if it works out. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do think it's really critical that we have the Energy Advisory Committee weigh in on this and make the recommendation based upon their knowledge of the best way to reach residents. I also would note that direct mailers are kind of expensive. It's an expensive way to get information out into the public, and a lot of people don't check their mail on a regular basis, whereas they check online resources and other resources for information. So people like me, for example, would not see the postcard for a few months. because snail mail is not something that I stay on top of because I do everything electronically. So I think that's, we should be really cautious about spending money on a medium that maybe is not going to get to everyone. And so we should first ask the Energy Advisory and our communications team the best way to get information out.
Councilor Bagley?
One final question, and I'll let it lie. The Energy Advisory Committee sent out an everyday direct mailer, did it not? And how much did that cost? And that didn't even come to the council.
It costs roughly $2,400.
Call the question.
So I don't know if so do you have is the question as stated, or would you amend to?
As stated.
As stated, okay. So Councilor Bagley moved to authorize the city manager to send an EDDM postcard to all households in Portsmouth showing community pricing versus Azores and how to opt out. Is there a date of which, because that, as stated, can everybody that discuss sending it to the Energy Advisory Council can still vote for this, as I understand, since there's not a date. But do you want a date, or are you happy with this and vote to send something out?
I thought urgency was the correct approach. So my opinion was the motion's intent was at the city manager's earliest convenience, not a delayed process.
And so it's just as quickly as you can?
Yeah.
Okay. ASAP. All right. And you're not, okay, and you're not willing to modify that to send in, I guess, like, I like the idea of sending it to in 6 months or in 2 months when we have the updated rates. But if, is there any, I'd wait a motion to, if there's no motion, there's no amendment here?
No, there's a motion on the table.
All right.
A question to call the vote.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
All right.
Should it go past 10:30, Your Honor?
I wait a motion to go past 10:30.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, I think the last one was 6-2. Approval of Parking and Traffic Safety Committee, April 2nd, 2026 action sheet.
Your Honor, I move to approve and accept the action sheet and minutes of the April 2nd, 2026 Parking Traffic Safety Committee meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, approval of grant from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation for improvements to the intersection of Market Street and Russell Street in the amount of $1.45 million.
Your Honor, I move to authorize the city manager to enter a grant agreement, approve any future scheduled modifications, and accept $1.45 million from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation to take advantage of state and federal funding opportunities for improvements to the intersection of Market Street and Russell Street.
Second?
It's a pretty big number.
Yep. Probably gonna cost way more than that, though.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, approval of amendment to the previously approved Emergency Management Performance Grant at EMPG from the New Hampshire Department of Safety for Emergency Operations Center.
Your Honor, I move to accept the terms of the Emergency Management Performance Grant amendment as presented to reflect the change of federal funding year and period of performance dates from August 31st, 2024 to August 31st, 2026, and authorize the city manager to enter in the amended grant agreement as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is the informational items to the city manager.
No, we have one more, Your Honor.
Nope, one more.
Approval of, sorry. Approval of Victims of Crime Award, a VOCA grant in the amount of $41,000.
Move to approve and accept the VOCA grant as presented.
Second that.
Any discussion?
Just excited to get the money.
Yeah. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, city manager's informational items.
We'll go as quickly as we can. The first one is a quick verbal report from the acting city attorney on 134 Pleasant Street.
Yes, thank you. So very briefly, the property owner at 134 Pleasant Street has revised his plan for redevelopment of the site, and as of right now is not requiring a license for the vehicular egress from that property over the over the Parrot Ave parking lot. There will be a request for a revocable license for the stormwater infrastructure that would also cross the Parrot Ave parking lot. That would come up at a later date after the project moves along a little further, and more feedback can be received from the state and from the planning board.
Thank you. Next up, Your Honor, is a report back on the water and sewer rate model questions, which were posed to staff back at the work session on March 2nd. And Councilors had provided several questions, to which the city team and our consultant, David Hyder from Stantec, provided a written memo that is in your packet. And I think what staff and I are looking for tonight is guidance to be able to move forward with a recommendation to adopt the recommended rate tier structure at the next council meeting on May 4th, so that we have time to make necessary accounting and billing adjustments in advance of July 1st. And as a side note, the fee committee has already discussed the actual rates and fees, but as part of the fee committee process, which gets incorporated into the budget. But we're looking for guidance on whether we can proceed with bringing the recommendation to the May 4th council meeting.
And so without any change, it goes up 12%, and with the changes proposed, it would go up 6%.
Correct.
Okay, seems like good changes.
We will keep going then. Item C is the Public Art Review Committee, or PARC, art exhibitions in the Portsmouth Room. And this came about as a way to brighten and enliven the space in the Portsmouth Room. You all recall with the renovation and the clearing and the painting of the wall and the freshening of the carpet. We then had a series of portraits as part of the 400th celebration, and they were just lovely. So people really liked the idea of a curated feeling in that room. And thankfully, we have the Public Art Review Committee that is looking to host art exhibits in the room, so they'll curate the art, and they've got a request out for art that will lead to the pilot scheduled for this May. So that is really exciting. Things will not be for sale. I think it's important to say that, but it will be a way to showcase local artists. Item D is a reminder that this Wednesday night, April 22nd at 6 p.m., we will have our open house with the master plan consultant, Uteal. It will be their first time presenting on vision and accompanying thoughts that come with the vision, and they are looking for feedback to see if they're on the right track. And that will be this Wednesday at 6 p.m. at Community Campus. E is a report back on the transcription and indexing capabilities of our YouTube channel. I will be really quick, but I owed you all a report back. The YouTube automatically generates captions or transcripts for uploaded videos. These are not immediate, and they may take some time to process, especially for longer meetings. We would not declare these to serve as official transcripts. I want to be clear on that. In terms of the license or subscription we have with YouTube, there are no licensing restrictions in the standard YouTube accounts that prevent transcription or captioning. These are built-in features available to all channels. There is no capacity issue per se. YouTube provides very large storage capacity with defined per video limits of up to 12 hours or 256 gigabytes per video. YouTube does not publish a total storage limit for a channel. The last question was, is there a way to bookmark or timestamp the various sections of a meeting? Yes, but it is manual and limited, and we can create chapters using timestamps in the video description, which become clickable navigation points. These could be manually created and maintained and do not provide full agenda-based indexing like a dedicated meeting management system. And speaking of a dedicated system, we are in the process of reviewing a handful of options from different vendors that will have greater integration with video and integrated attachments and resources for both internal and external users. That would be you all as it relates to how you receive your packet. And it will be all in the way that we can transcribe meetings. So we look forward to a much more user-friendly integrated solution in the next few months. So we will not rely on the YouTube transcription. F is the mayor's favorite day, Household Hazardous Waste Day, on Saturday, May 9th, 8 to noon. And bring your things. And G just relates to the draft policy, which will be incorporated into the public hearing and second reading of the RAP next meeting. Thank you.
If If nobody has anything under, thank you, City Manager. If nobody has any, under miscellaneous?
One quick one. The Housing Committee, now that everybody's appointed, is going to meet Thursday. Staff has taken the 146 items in the Housing Action Plan, and they're going to present what they would propose as the 24 or 5 crucial ones. And then we're looking at a group exercise of some kind to set priorities on those 24 or 5.
Excellent. Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. Some students at the high school are organizing a Strike Out the Angst, Strike Out the Stigma, sorry. Strike Out the Stigma on May 13th. It's a baseball, softball game, just designed to improve mental health. And
Excellent. What, May 13th?
May 13th.
Anything else? I do have one, I'd wait a motion on one thing. That would be to move, I would wait a motion that the city council support the city attorney filing an amicus curiae in support of Dover School District in the case of Dover School District in Boston for school care.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or anything that the city attorney would like to add?
Sure, I'd be happy to speak to it, Mayor. Thank you. Just for context, the Dover School Board has, and their superintendent have filed suit against school care, alleging numerous unlawful acts, breach of contract among them, violations of the right to know law among them. It is worth noting that I found out during this meeting that the Secretary of State's office has moved to intervene in that case on the side of school care. This case is going to a hearing on a temporary restraining order this Friday at 2 o'clock up in Stratford County Superior Court in Dover. And the Dover School Board made a request to the city that the city file an amicus curiae in support of their position. The brief would be limited in scope, would not be designed to put the city's interest at risk, and would not make the city a party to this suit, but would just be for the limited purpose of, for some limited purposes, just to articulate where the city stands in relation to school care, and to bring to the court's attention some points of law that perhaps are not fully articulated in Dover's pleadings that they've filed so far.
Excellent. Any questions of the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll wait a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Portsmouth.